Zelda Invades Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76. Infiltrate again. While changing clothes, Link gathered his hair and suddenly found that the earphones he was wearing had fallen off. Only then did he realize that Peppa was still in the Yagay team's lair. The continuous dangers and sudden changes made Link's brain a little dull, and he almost forgot about Peppa, which made Link feel very guilty. He didn't even have time to take a good breath before he hurriedly changed his clothes and ran out. Tony knocked on the reactor that had been released from the suppression restrictions and said, "Okay, then I'll go with you to rescue Peppa. It's time to repay him." Rogers also said, "I'll go too." Link said in a deep voice, "No need, I'll go alone. Now that Peppa's whereabouts have not been discovered, I just need to sneak in and bring him back." Tony did not hesitate and nodded. "Okay, then you have to be careful. Since he has escaped, we can contact the government to eliminate the Yagay team and the banana building. Don't take risks again," Link said to them. "Protect the princess." Then he turned around and looked left and right, ran to grab a motorcycle, and apologized to the driver he knocked to the ground. "Sorry, I bought the car and let the Iron Man on the side of the road pay for it." Then he stepped on the accelerator and the engine roared away. Link increased the speed of his motorcycle to the maximum and quickly sped to the front of the building. He did not slow down and continued to step on the accelerator. The two Yagay ninjas in front of the door shouted, "Something is happening." Then Link threw the motorcycle and a bomb out, detonating it and exploding sparks all over the sky. Just when Link made a big noise and attracted the attention of the Yagay team, Link released cold air on the ground, condensed a thin layer of ice, and threw another bomb backwards, detonating it with a shield. His body immediately slid out quickly, squatted, slid to the lawn, squatted down and quickly went around to the side of the building. The surrounding cameras were covered with frost by Link. The side door required a card to enter. Link wanted to kick it open directly, but he was worried that it would activate the alarm device inside the door. Suddenly, he thought of a scene that he often saw when watching action movies with Zelda, drilling into the ventilation duct. He jumped up, used the magnetic grabber, gently pulled open the iron sheet, and drilled in. Suddenly, Link's whole body released cold air, and a layer of ice formed on the inner wall of the ventilation duct. Link supported the inner wall of the duct with both hands, and slid quickly inside. He soon entered the interior of the building. As for Peppa, he did not escape. He saw Link and others escape, and called Link several times with the headset, asking for the next step, but Link did not reply. So Peppa kept sticking to the order given to him by Link, which was to explore intelligence. Peppa hid behind a vase, and saw Lord Kage was furious, and scolding his subordinates. "You bunch of losers, Zelda came to you, but you didn't catch her." The Yagay ninjas felt guilty. "We are so ashamed, boss. We are useless. We are willing to accept any punishment." Lord Kage shouted, "Really? Then you can't eat bananas for a month." "What?" The Yagay team, who had just said that they were willing to accept any punishment, suddenly became unwilling and started to riot. "We are willing to accept any punishment, whether it is chopping off hands and feet or beheading. It's up to you. But not letting us eat bananas is too much. Even if you are the boss, you can't be so inhumane." Having said that, Peppa felt strange. How can you eat bananas if your head is chopped off? Of course, the magical Yagay team may have other ways to eat bananas. Peppa thought so. Lord Kage was furious. "Who said that? Stand up. Who said I'm inhumane?" Then he rushed forward, knocking over a bunch of ninjas. He didn't care whether he caught the right person or not. He grabbed a ninja and slapped him hard, making the innocent guy's lips swollen like a banana. Lord Kage said angrily, "Do you accept it? Life is precious. Bananas are more delicious. I don't accept it." Pa. Peppa was very amused and couldn't help but cover his mouth and laugh. Fortunately, he didn't laugh out loud, but Peppa's body shook with laughter, and the flower pot he was leaning on also began to tremble. It attracted the attention of a member of the Yagay team, who shouted, "There is someone behind the vase." Peeper subconsciously jumped out and shouted happily, "Ahaha! You found it! Yay team! Peeper! Peeper! Oh, goodbye!" With a whoosh, he flew away with the bamboo dragonfly holding the leaf. Lord Kage roared, "Yes, haha! The elves in the Kralo forest are in the same group as Link and his men. Chase them, catch them alive, and you'll get a box of bananas." Oh. The Yage ninjas rushed forward aggressively. Wow. Pepper ran away with snot and tears. At this time, Link happened to be downstairs where the incident happened. He held his breath, came behind a patrolling Yage, raised his great sword, and chopped it hard. He directly hit a perfect 8 times attack damage, and killed one person at once. At this moment, Link had killed 5 Yage without anyone noticing. His backstab ability was undoubtedly revealed. Link attacks the enemy's vital parts, which has a damage bonus. Attacking the head, double the damage. Throwing the weapon that is about to explode at the enemy, double the damage. And sneaking behind the enemy and attacking from the back will cause the highest 8 times damage. It is because of this nature that Link has the strongest assassin ability, although he is known for his strength in head-on confrontation. At this moment, he suddenly remembered the sound of violent footsteps. Link's ears stood up, and he looked around with his sword in hand. He thought that the Yage army had discovered his whereabouts. As a result, he looked up and found that it was the dense footsteps coming from upstairs. Link reacted and realized that this Yage team must be chasing something. Of course it was Pepper. He quickly ran away, fearing that Pepper would be in danger. He didn't care about being discovered by the Yage team. He directly put his hands together into a shuttle shape and blew hard to make a whistle. Link is versatile. He is the first knight of Hyrule, the first archer of Hyrule, the first warrior of Hyrule, the first rock climber of Hyrule, the first big eater of Hyrule, the first surfer of Hyrule, the first cooking genius of Hyrule, and the first jar-throwing maniac of Hyrule. Similarly, his ability to whistle can also occupy the throne of the first in Hyrule. The sound has a strong penetrating ability, and the mount can be called from a distance. A whistle went straight into Pepper's ears. Pepper had also learned Link's whistling skills. Unfortunately his hands couldn't cover it, and he immediately knew that the brave man had come to save him. He turned around, rushed down the stairs, and ran head-on into Link's arms. Pepper cried and begged for votes. Thanks to book friend Minecrafter 100 for the support of the starting coins. Chapter 77 Jumping off the building again. Link held Pepper in one hand, and the other hand was not idle. He first threw a bomb into the corridor. With a bang, although the bomb did not cause any damage, it had a strong repulsion ability, and all the Yage team that rushed over were repelled. Link also took advantage of the situation, and flew backwards like a leaf, taking advantage of the momentum to escape. Link was too lazy to fight with the Yage team. Although Link almost did not encounter an effective counterattack from the Yage team along the way, but this was all thanks to Link's super backstab ability. On the front battlefield, the Yage team can teleport. Link can certainly rely on his strong combat experience to fight even the teleported enemies. But what about facing hundreds of teleported enemies? Even Link can only grope blindly. Since he has found Pepper, he might as well evacuate. He does not have the strength to wipe out the Yage team now. But Lord Gay roared, "Stop, Zelda." Link gritted his teeth. This guy called him Zelda more than once or twice, and Link will remember this grudge. Suddenly, frost formed on the ground, and a thin layer of ice covered it. Link was very good at skating, and he slid quickly on the ice with weak friction. But Lord Kage was not as good as Link. He just slapped his face, and touched the ground closely. He was about to sit up, covering his face, and screaming in pain, when he heard, "Oh, it's so slippery, and I'm going to fall." He turned around in despair and saw a bunch of ninjas swaying left and right without stopping. They covered Lord Kage like a flood. As for Link, he slid towards the window again, intending to break the glass and jump down. With a shoulder, the glass shattered with a click. Link jumped down from the tall building again, with glass fragments like raindrops all over the sky. As a result, he suddenly felt a loud rumbling sound behind him. When he turned around, he saw the ninja who was unwilling to give up threw the samurai sword in his hand and stabbed Link. Link grabbed Pepper with one hand and swept the shield with the other, blocking all the flying samurai swords, which were now far away. When Link thought he could finally breathe a sigh of relief, suddenly snap. The shield was overwhelmed and shattered again. Broken again. Link was at a loss. The shield exploded. What did he use as a glider? This time, there were no sturdy American soldiers from the 1940s on the ground to serve as his living meat shield. Link was a little panicked. He now especially missed the piraglider given to him by the old king. It was sturdy and durable. Equipment without durability values was reliable. Just when Link thought he could only endure this fall, Pepper suddenly shouted, "Brave man, I will take you to glide." Ah. Link looked at Pepper in his arms and immediately thought of the cuckoo chicken on the Hyrule continent. So he lifted Pepper above his head. Pepper took out the leaf bamboo dragonfly and turned it around. As expected, it actually stopped its fall and glided in the air with Link. Ahaha. Pepper was very happy to see that he could help Link. Brave master, I'm Lihuandra. Pepper's voice changed. Link was still too heavy compared to Pepper, and he stretched Pepper's body proportion from 4:3 to 18:9. They glided to the street, with cars coming and going. Link was afraid that he would accidentally pull Pepper into a long piece of chewing gum, so he let go of Pepper's body and fell from a height of 4 floors. Passersby exclaimed and made a large space for Link to fall, fearing that they would be crushed to death by Link. Link landed on the road, his front foot bent, and landed on the ground. His foot cushioned the force, then his knees and thighs, and Link rolled forward again. His left shoulder touched the ground, and once again relieved the force. His body rolled to the side of the road, and by rolling, he finally completely relieved the strong impact of falling. As a victim of many plane crashes, Link naturally knows a set of methods to fall from a high altitude as safely as possible. As soon as Link stood up from the ground, he found himself rolling on the road of a New York street with heavy traffic. A car that didn't see Link lying on the ground hit him. When Link stood up, the driver saw him and stepped on the brakes, but it didn't work. Link had no choice but to jump up and hit the windshield of the car. He used his own rolling force reducing method to roll over and fall behind the car. There was a commotion around, and the surrounding cars stopped in a hurry. The driver who knocked Link over also got out of the car in a hurry and ran to the back of the car to see Link. Seeing that Link was staring at the sky with a sullen face and motionless, he thought that he had hit Link to death. He immediately walked up with trembling legs and asked in a trembling voice, I'm sorry, Link sat up suddenly and straightened his upper body. The driver screamed ghost in fear and sat on the ground. Instead, it was Link who pulled him up. Link apologized. "I'm sorry, I didn't damage your car, did I? I'll compensate you." When Link hit the windshield just now, he already felt the concave feeling of the windshield breaking. He felt that it was his responsibility. If he had simply stopped the momentum of the car with the magnetic grabber just now, he wouldn't have damaged the windshield. The driver looked like he saw a ghost. What kind of magical boy is this? He hit someone, not to mention that the boy was magically not injured at all, but he looked apologetic and worried about the safety of his car. What happened to this world? Exclamation mark. Is this boy a reincarnated saint? Exclamation mark. It's okay. The driver hurriedly got in the car and drove away quickly. Link and Pepper got back to Stark Tower safely. On the way, Link held Pepper and fiddled with him left and right. Seeing that he didn't stretch Pepper's face, he was relieved. While Link sneaked into the banana building again, Hawkeye contacted SHIELD and Tony contacted the military, preparing to surround the banana building. This incident is even more serious than the monsters that ravaged New York before. Monsters have no wisdom and organizational ability, and even if they destroy, they are not large scale. But the Yage team is different. They are a mysterious organization with strong action capabilities and extremely strong camouflage capabilities. At a time when no one knew, they actually undermined banana technology, a Fortune 500 company. This time they only disguise themselves as the CEO of a listed company, so what should they do next time they disguise themselves as the president? So the military acted unprecedentedly quickly. Within an hour, the crowd around the banana building was cleared and surrounded by layers of banana building. But at this moment, the Yage team has been deserted, and the entire building is empty. The Yage team is a ninja organization that lurks in the dark, like a bat. After being discovered in its nest, it lurks in the next dark area. Like an indelible shadow, it will appear in any dark corner of the world, like a ghost that makes people sleepless all night. Link jumped off the building again to ask for collection and votes. Thanks to the book friend Lily Aquarius for supporting 100 starting coins. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 78 The Doomed Fair. The sudden disappearance of Team Yage annoyed Tony and Heem. Heem yelled and questioned why the US government was so incompetent. As for Tony, he hacked into the nationwide surveillance system and tried to find Team Yage and find a way to retaliate. The entire shield was busy tracking down Team Yage. Nick knocked on the table with his knuckles and said to Link, "You should have told me about Team Yage earlier." Link was speechless and very depressed. Once Team Yage appeared, the already chaotic situation would become more complicated. Apart from these, the appearance of a team of ninjas who were staring at Zelda and hiding in the dark waiting for an opportunity to move out was enough to annoy Link. At this time, an angry middle-aged official came in from the outside without knocking and shouted, "This is ridiculous." Nick rubbed his eyes. The annoying guy is here. The middle-aged official stood in front of Nick's desk, straightened his clothes, and questioned Nick. As the director of the Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, you monitor abnormal events and abnormal people all over the world. A group of destructive, mysterious organizations actually invaded New York. I really want to know what you are busy with all day. Then he turned his head to look at Link, who was sitting on the soft chair and sulking, and squinted at Nick and continued, drinking and chatting with this underage girl. Link glared at the middle-aged official and said in a low voice, "I'm a man." Nick added, "And he is not a minor." The middle-aged official said angrily, "I don't have time to talk to you about this. I'm questioning why you failed to eliminate the Yage team and Link. Arrest him quickly and interrogate him thoroughly." Nick spread his hands. "The little girl next to you is Link." The middle-aged official's eyes shifted to Link and finally noticed that Link had a long ear exposed on his head. Link also looked at the middle-aged official coldly. The middle-aged official said in a cold voice, "Are you the long-eared man who claims to be from another world? What about the kingdom of Hylia and the goddess of Hyrule?" Link corrected, "It's goddess Hylia and the kingdom of Hyrule." The middle-aged official took a step back and said to Nick, "What are you thinking? How could you tolerate an uncontrollable monster running around? Catch him quickly." Link stood up. Although he was a head shorter than the middle-aged official, he made the middle-aged official a little afraid and took another step back. Nick spread his hands helplessly to Link. "Now you understand my situation. An official from a government agency directly under the president always comes to question this and that. He is neurotic and thinks that any person or weapon that is not under government control should be eliminated or imprisoned." The middle-aged official said angrily, "Director of the Strategic National Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, you have to understand one thing. This long-eared man has an unknown origin and is very powerful. All the information you have is his own opinion. Do you know his background? Do you know his true purpose? A person from another world who can defeat two biochemical monsters. Do you think Link will live peacefully in the United States and always act as a caring citizen to help us fight monsters? What should we do if he wants to invade our country?" Link. At this time, two people walked in from outside. One of them was Tony. He opened the door and said, "What do you mean by unknown origin? Link is now a legal American citizen. Every income will be taxed to the country. Unfortunately, Link has no income. I, Tony Stark, am the guardian of Link and Zelda. You want to arrest Link without knowing right or wrong. Where does that put me, Tony Stark? Is this how you government officials treat legal taxpayers?" The middle-aged official's face darkened. Although SHIELD is an international organization under the jurisdiction of the World Security Council, it has a cooperative relationship with the US government. But after all, the main body is in the United States, so it is subject to the control and supervision of the US government. He can yell at Nick. But Tony is different. Tony is a capitalist, a big taxpayer, and has a good relationship with the military and the government. It is useless for the government to pressure Tony. The other person is Natasha. As soon as she entered the door, she saw that Link looked very bad. Worried that Link might suddenly get angry, he twisted his waist and walked up to the middle-aged official, glanced at him, and suddenly snapped his fingers. A piece of metal fell on the middle-aged official's shoulder. Zzzz. A series of electric currents appeared, and the middle-aged official fell to the ground and twitched. Natasha said, "I'll inject this guy with hallucinogens later, and he'll forget that he's been in this office. Then when he wakes up, we'll send someone to take him out." Nick shrugged. In the eyes of these stupid officials, we are just a civilian organization. Tony asked, "Who is this guy? What's his name?" Nick snorted. "He's from the National Intelligence Agency. They've long been dissatisfied with S.H.I.E.L.D. having such a large range of activities. The relationship is just like your Stark Group and Hammer Technology. We S.H.I.E.L.D. also have business conflicts with them." Tony crossed his arms in dissatisfaction. "Hammer? Why are you comparing me to this medieval workshop?" Nick said in a muffled voice. "Hammer said in the news recently that he is holding a grand science and technology expo, which is more historically significant than your father's expo. He also said that he has created a more powerful fighting machine than your Iron Man." Tony curled his lips and expressed disdain. "I hope they don't go bankrupt after this expo." Link raised his eyebrows. "Expo? Different from the original plot. This time Tony didn't spend a lot of money to hold a science and technology expo, but Hammer was planning to show off." Link looked up. "Tony, let's go to the expo too." Tony frowned. What good things can that Hammer guy show? Just as Link was thinking about how to explain that Hammer and Ivan might cause trouble at the expo, Nick suddenly said, "I just asked Natasha to investigate Hammer Industries recently. Natasha, tell me the information you have." Natasha only said one sentence, and Link and Tony's faces changed. "According to the information I have collected, Hammer Industries seems to be conducting human biological experiments. Moreover, I have confirmed that Ivan was rescued by Hammer Industries." Tony said in a deep voice, "Human biological experiments, Ivan? What does that guy want to do?" Natasha gathered her hair and said, "You can find out by looking at the news about Hammer. He once stated in the media that he suspected Link was a genetically enhanced person like Rogers, and a test subject of yours, Stark. Hammer's recent movements are very disturbing." Tony took a deep breath, then looked at Link seriously. "Aren't you angry? Hammer actually compared you with that Tights maniac." Link, please vote and collect. Thanks to the book friend Caldo is safe for the 500 starting point coin reward support. Thanks to book friend Ban Shuang Chu Yang for the reward of 100 Kidian coins. Chapter 79 Peepa's first battle. Since the expo would not start until 2 days later, Link was already tired of running back and forth from Tony's residence in California to New York, so he decided to stay in New York for the next few days. Tony was in a bad mood because he was kidnapped, so he stayed alone in the studio in Stark Tower and began to make new battle suits. Everyone has a way to vent their anxiety. Rogers punched sandbags, Zelda studied strange things, and as for Tony, he made new battle suits one after another. Link, he didn't have much to worry about. He had experienced all kinds of storms. It was just because of the reappearance of the Yage team that he was a little worried about Zelda, so he stayed with her all the time. Zelda's hobby was to study strange things and make things, but she knew that Link would be bored, so she put down her work and went out with Link and Peppa to have a happy trip, strolling on the streets of New York. Although Link is very famous now, it is difficult for others to notice him because he dressed up as a woman, trimmed his eyebrows, and wore a pair of colored non-opioid glasses. As for the long ears, it is also because of Link that young men and women are now in a trend of dressing up, imitating Link and wearing long fake ears. Although Link himself thinks it is silly, he cannot deny that this trend is very popular, and young people wearing long fake ears can be seen all over the street. Link and Zelda are not conspicuous. Zelda and Link went around to buy food, and soon, each of them had a big bag of things in their arms. Peppa sat on Link's shoulders, holding a big stick, like a Kralo fan. Zelda looked at the bustling streets and thought of her broken Hyrule Kingdom, saying, "New Yorkers are really strong." You can't tell that they have suffered so many disasters. They are all living their lives bravely. Link said silently in his heart, there will be more disasters in the future, and I hope they can hold on. The two came to a toy store and prepared to buy some toys for Peppa. As soon as he entered, he smiled. Because there are many peripheral products about Captain America, Iron Man, and Link in the store. Vibranium shield, Iron Man reactor, Link's shield, and Link's long ears, which are made very realistic. Oh. Peppa flew over as if he had found a treasure, picked up a Q version of Link's doll, jumped left and right and shouted, "Sir, I want to buy a hero." Zelda also came up with surprise, whispering, "Wow." Picked up a Link doll, pointed at the doll's erect thick eyebrows, and said to Link with a smile, "They still understand your characteristics. Just your willow leaf eyebrows, and you still say me." Link smiled but said nothing. Then I saw Peppa holding a Captain America doll in his left hand and a Iron Man doll in his right hand, imitating the sound of fighting with his mouth, and controlling the two dolls to fight. Then he looked up at Link with shining eyes and said, "Sir, can I buy these dolls and put them on the bed in my room?" Link nodded, and Peppa cheered. Link and Zelda live together, but Peppa has a separate room. Tony loves Peppa very much. According to his wishes, he decorated the room with many plants and made a water device. The overall tone is light green. There are hidden lights in the room. At night, when the lights are turned on, it is like being in a forest under the fine sunlight. Every night, Peppa carefully helps Link and Zelda to make the bed and waits for them to fall asleep and then flies back to his room to roll around. There is also a small Iron Man suit made by Zelda on the bed, which he carefully collects. When paying the bill, the owner kept staring at Peppa who was calling back and forth, thinking, whose toy is this? It looks very realistic. When will I get it in stock? Suddenly, a child's voice came, "Mom, I want this doll." Peppa turned around, because the child's hand was pointing at him. The child was chubby and wore a small suit. The buttons of the clothes seemed to be bursting. His mother, on the other hand, was a woman with a long neck and high cheekbones. Her clothes were expensive, but her taste was a bit poor. "Mom, I want him." The child's mother said softly, "Okay, my little baby." Then she changed her tone and pointed at Peppa with her skinny finger and asked the owner, "How much is this thing?" The owner smiled politely and said, "I'm sorry, this is a toy of this little customer, not our store." "Mom." Okay. The child's mother responded quickly and then said to Link, "Kit, can you sell this thing to my child? I'll give you $50. As they were talking, the child had already treated Peppa as his toy and reached out to grab it. Link put Peppa on his shoulder and the child glared at him. Link said, "He's not a toy. I won't sell it to you." The child shouted directly, "Mom, I want that toy. I want that toy." As a Hylian, with such long ears, he was very sensitive to sound, and the child's sharp voice made Link feel a little irritating. Link frowned slightly. When he was the child's age, he had already gone to the Zora territory for training. The child's mother was also a little impatient. "Okay, don't be stubborn anymore. I'll give you $2,000. You give this toy to my son, and you can buy another one when the time comes." Link shook his head and said nothing. After swiping the card, he left with the things. The shopkeeper just saw the balance on the card and was still a little stunned at the moment. "Isn't this number a bit too big?" Zelda leaned over and said to the child with a smile, "Little brother, this Peppa is our friend. We can't sell it." As a result, the bear child said coldly, "Is it childish? My mother has given you money. Give me the toy." Zelda didn't expect that she would be called childish by a child, and she was immediately dumbfounded. The child was impatient and actually pushed Zelda and directly took action, jumping up to grab the Peppa on Link's shoulder. Link frowned, and he was not ready to teach the child a lesson. Peppa suddenly jumped up, yelled "Ah hey," and kicked the child in the face, knocking him down. The child was stunned lying on the ground, and so were the parents. Peppa flew in the sky, angrily whispering in English, "How dare you be rude to the princess? Night Peppa, will teach you a lesson." Zelda made a small hero costume for Peppa, and Peppa thought that he, like Link, had become Zelda's personal knight. Now is the time to show loyalty to the princess. Peppa yelled, fell from the sky, sat on the child's face, jumped around and hit the child with his body. The child cried in fear and rolled like a ball. The child's mother screamed, "This thing is alive. Go away. Go away. Monster. Stay away from my son. Please vote for Peppa's bravery. I'm in a bad state." It took me 2 hours to write a daily routine. Thanks to book friend Lily Shooping for the support of 200 Kidian coins. Chapter 80 The Destroyer. Peppa got into a fight. Tony looked strange, eating the pizza that Zelda bought from outside. And Peppa stood on the table with his hands on his hips and said in a tender voice, "I'm awesome, right?" Tony nodded. Awesome. With Peppa's size, he was able to beat up a little fat guy, which was considered to be extremely powerful. Not only that, Zelda recalled the scene at that time with a very strange expression. Peppa also beat up his mother. Tony's face was stunned and his mouth stopped for a while before he continued to chew his food, as expected of someone from Hyrule. "He is awesome." Link rubbed his eyebrows and continued to add, "Not only his mother." Peppa was so angry that he didn't even let the toy store manager go and beat him up. After leaving, he kicked a husky on the side of the road. Tony choked and poured himself a glass of water. While coughing, Tony stared at Peppa. "I didn't realize that you are a little bully." "No, little Hulk. Ha." Peppa posed like Bruce Lee and jumped on the table. Link and Zelda smiled in confusion. It seemed that Peppa had a lot of fun today. Late at night, when Link and Zelda were about to go to sleep, Peppa carefully made the bed. Suddenly, Jarvis' alarm sounded. An enemy has invaded the house. Peppa jumped up immediately. Enemy. Fight. Zelda hurriedly hugged Peppa, worried that he would be impulsive. Link was suspicious. Did the Yage team come to cause trouble again? After settling Zelda, he walked out of the room calmly. At this moment, Tony had equipped his battlesuit. Tony said in a deep voice, "There are 2 uninvited guests outside." Link rushed downstairs first. As soon as he landed, he felt a gust of wind. When he turned around, a black battle armor punched him in the face. Not the Yage. A high-speed rotating drill was thrown out with a fist, making a buzzing sound. If the punch really hit Link's face, he would probably be disfigured by the drill. Link turned on his toes and leaned back to avoid the punch. But then, several electric whips suddenly shot out from the arm of the pitch black armor and hit Link. Because the distance was too close, Link could not dodge and was hit by the electric whip, and his body was suddenly paralyzed by severe pain. The pitch black armor turned around, and his 2 black eyes suddenly released a dark red light. Of course, the battlesuit must be used to deal with the battlesuit. Tony's frivolous voice came to my ears. There was a strong light in front of him, and Iron Man flew in the air and rushed over quickly. With a bang, he knocked the pitch black battlesuit away. Link half knelt on the ground, with arcs of electricity on his shoulders, shining brightly in the dark night. It took Link a long time to recover from the strong electric current attack. Fortunately, Link had fought against Thor's Calamity Ganon and his body had endured the test of strong electricity. If it was an ordinary person, he would have died on the spot if he had endured such a high voltage. Iron Man stepped on the black armor and fell to the ground, mocking, "This ugly shape is obviously Hammer's masterpiece." The powerful laser in his hand shot out and instantly pierced through the armor of the black armor. Iron Man turned and looked at Link. "Are you okay, HMM?" Link was panting and heard something wrong. He looked up and saw the black armor stood up again, holding Iron Man's leg, howling and throwing Iron Man fiercely at Link. Tony shouted, "Link, save me." Link hurriedly released the magnetic grabber to control Tony. But at this moment, the ground behind him suddenly cracked, and suddenly a fist stretched out, grabbed Link's ankle, and then, zzz, released strong electricity. Ah! Link's body turned white, and he was attacked by electric current all over his body. His mind was scattered, and the magnetic grabber broke. Tony shouted, and he continued to move forward, knocking Link over with his head. The 2 of them crashed into the wall together, making a sound of destruction. Link spit out a mouthful of blood and lay on the ground breathing rapidly. Tony shouted, "What's wrong?" Link said, "It's okay." He stood up with his knees propped up. There was a hissing sound from the ground, and an equally black armor crawled out of the ground with a drill on his fist. Tony was puzzled and said, I clearly pierced through that guy's armor. How can he still move? Then came Jarvis' voice, Mr. Tony, according to my analysis, these two enemies are actually living beings. The armor whose armor was pierced by Tony's powerful laser walked straight over, and green blood flowed out of the hole in his chest. Tony's breathing stagnated. The armor suddenly roared, and tore the visor on the chest, revealing a chest with muscles as hard as rock. There was a wound on the chest that was bleeding. When Tony looked closely, he found that this strangely strong body was actually connected to the armor on the surface. Ivan's voice with a strong Russian accent came from the armor helmet. Tony Stark. Surprised? Tony exclaimed, you lunatic, you actually experimented on yourself. Ivan sneered, that's a good idea. As a result, Ivan's voice was also heard from the helmet of another black armor, but these two destroyers are controlled by me remotely, not in person. This is a deadly weapon to destroy you. I admit that I'm not as good as you in mecha, but the destroyer is different. He is the perfect combination of machinery and life. Link finally recovered from the paralyzed state, stood up, and said to Tony in a deep voice, the aura of these two destroyers is a bit weird, similar to the Hulk. Ivan's loud laughter came from inside the helmet. That's right. Hulk. Hammer, that guy, got a few tubes of Hulk's blood from somewhere, and used some poor guys to create a lot of new Hulks. Then the voice lowered, but unlike the Hulk, these monsters can be controlled by people. I transplanted electronic brains into them, and they became empty shells without souls, pure biological weapons, for my use. Not only that, I installed a new generation of battle suits for them. The firepower and speed are no less than your battle suit. It's equivalent to you, the combination of Iron Man and the Hulk. Do you feel desperate now? I said, I will make you collapse. At this time, two more flames flew in the sky, and landed on the ground with a bang. They were two more destroyers. The four destroyers surrounded Tony and Link. Two of the destroyers' fists deformed, and turned into two buzzing and rotating drills. The other two destroyers came with a sizzle sound of electricity, holding two electric whips. Thanks to book friend Minecraft 500 for the support of Kidian coins. Chapter 81, Treat others the way they do. Tony snorted. It seems that those who like remote control toys don't know Zelda alone. Link, what should we do? The destroyer is equivalent to the power of the Hulk, plus the flying armor and long-range weapons of Iron Man. A combination of technology and brutality. Just one is hard enough to deal with. And here, there are four destroyers to besiege them, and Tony feels a little overwhelmed. Link said in a deep voice, kill them. He was in a bad mood. Four destroyers meant that four innocent people were forcibly transformed into monsters. This undoubtedly made Link furious, and he wanted to kill Ivan and Hammer in his heart. The combination of the Hulk and Iron Man? Link didn't care. He had beaten the Hulk and Iron Man. At worst, he would beat this so-called combination again. As a brave man blessed by the goddess Hylia, Link would never tolerate himself being afraid of the enemy. If he was afraid, his sword would lose its edge. Link took out a shield and a long sword from the weapon space and asked, how good are the conductivity of this sword and shield? Tony said, the shield is basically insulated. As for the resistance of the long sword, it's a little worse. Link said in a deep voice, that's enough. 3 of me, 1 of you. Then he rushed forward without saying anything more. Tony was shocked. Do you underestimate me? He suddenly shot into the air. Ivan laughed and said, Link, I have captured your movement information. Your current tricks don't work on the destroyers? Really? Link replied softly. With the long sword in his hand, he drew a sword flower and leaned between the two destroyers. Ivan sneered from the helmet of the destroyer. Do you think I don't know your tricks? Do you want to get in between the two destroyers and use dodging to make the two destroyers hurt each other? The drill in the hand of Destroyer A flew over quickly. Link's body turned to the side and kicked his arm. The drill of Destroyer A directly attacked the chest of another Destroyer B, but just before the attack, Destroyer A's attack suddenly stopped. Stop attacking. Link's face changed, and he stabbed Destroyer A's ribs with a sword. Destroyer B's electric whip came to lash out, and Link could only draw his sword and hurriedly blocked it with his shield. With a shield counter, the electric whip lashed back at Destroyer B, but just before it was about to hit Destroyer's head, the long whip suddenly lost its electricity. Ivan smiled and said, this is the mechanism I wrote for companions not to harm each other. I have studied your battles with Hulk and Abomination. Destroyer A and Destroyer B roared at the same time, and each punched Link. The wind from the punches from a distance of 1 meter even made Link's hair stand up. Link hurriedly laid a thin layer of ice under his feet, quickly dodged the 2 punches, slid between the 2 destroyers, summoned a big sword and slashed at the knees of the 2 destroyers. Tap, ta. Link hit the 2 destroyers with all his strength, breaking their knee armors. The huge force made the 2 destroyers kneel to the ground. Link jumped and stepped on the shoulder of Destroyer A, swinging his sword, trying to behead them. Ivan sneered, "Don't you want to see Tony's miserable state?" Link was speechless and saw Iron Man being grabbed by Destroyers C and D by the legs. The 2 destroyers actually wanted to tear Iron Man apart. In a hurry, the sword in Link's hand disappeared and turned into a bow, and his arms were stretched out. Bang, bang. His arms almost became after images, and 2 arrows shot out in the blink of an eye, hitting the 2 destroyers in the head. Although he failed to break the destroyer's visor, he successfully hit them stiff. Tony shouted, "Thank you," and broke free. Then he saw Link's situation and shouted, "Hide." In order to save Tony, Link was caught by Destroyer B and punched. Link put on his shield again, but he didn't have time to counter, and was punched out and about to fall into the sea. Link. Tony gritted his teeth and rushed to save Link, but he was immediately entangled by 2 destroyers. Link was hit by Destroyer B's punch and fell dizzy and saw stars. Just when he thought he would fall heavily into the sea, suddenly, he heard ah ha ha, and his body was gently lifted up by a large object. It turned out that the bird arrived in time and saved Link. And Pepper, wearing a small Iron Man suit, said tenderly, "Brave man, I will fight with you." Link gritted his teeth. "Where is Zelda? Didn't I ask her to hide obediently?" Zelda's gentle and firm voice came from the bird. "But I must save you." Zelda came out wearing control glasses. The bird landed beside Zelda, and Link jumped down hastily. He naturally would not blame Zelda, and said, "Be careful." At this moment, Iron Man also flew back above Link and Zelda, saying, "These guys are not easy to deal with." Iron Man was punched in the chest by a destroyer, and it was sunken. Link said in a deep voice, "Is it a mutual non-harm mechanism?" Ivan roared, "Go to hell." The 4 destroyers took out their electric whips and attacked. Link stepped forward and stretched out his right hand. Magnetic grabber, start. Link controlled the destroyer armor and quickly moved to the attack route of the other 3 destroyers' electric whips. The 3 destroyers saw that they were about to attack their companions and immediately put away their whips. Iron Man took the opportunity to release powerful lasers with both hands, piercing the armor of 2 destroyers. Link controlled the destroyer armor and slammed into the remaining destroyer. Link yelled, "Tony, Princess, use lasers to break their armor." He quickly stepped forward and stabbed a sword into the hole in the chest armor of a destroyer. Link held the sword with both hands and silently said, "Rest in peace." He twisted his wrist and the sword tip stirred violently in his chest. The destroyer roared wildly. Link raised his long sword and forcibly pulled off the chest armor. He stabbed the destroyer's head along the neck and released the sword. Ivan stayed in front of the computer, watching a destroyer lose his life, and yelled, "Attack Link." 2 destroyers stretched out their fists to hit Link. A heavy blow was heard in the air. Bang. A muffled sound came from the air. But under Link's huge strength, he picked up the body of the destroyer and blocked it in front of him. The 2 destroyers stopped punching. Ivan yelled, "Idiot. The destroyer is dead. Just keep hitting." But compared to Ivan's roar, the mechanism written into the control logic is more deterrent. The 2 destroyers didn't dare to throw punches. Ivan was in front of the computer, staring at Link from the perspective of a destroyer. This brat actually used the destroyer's no harm to each other mechanism as his own weapon. I, the author, ask for votes. Thanks to the book friend Lily Shooping for the 200 starting coins reward support. Chapter 82 Monster Legion. Tony saw Link using the destroyer's corpse to resist the attacks of other destroyers. He immediately began to speculate, as a hollow shell controlled by the brain, it will not have self-awareness. That is to say, the basis for the destroyer to identify its companions is probably a device in the destroyer's head. Tony released light with both hands, knocked a destroyer away, stood in the sky, and told Link his guess. Link simply twisted his wrist, turned the sword, and removed the destroyer's head. holding it in front of him. The two destroyers hesitated and stopped attacking. Ivan shouted, "Attack that girl." The two destroyers turned to Zelda. Zelda's flying bird turned into a huge shield, blocking in front of herself. A laser was released from the center of the shield. Pepper shouted ahaha, and his two little hands also released lasers. Ivan snorted, "Are you the only ones who can shoot lasers?" The two destroyers spread their arms, and a light blue light on their chests suddenly lit up, brewing microwaves, and two blue lights suddenly shot out. Iron Man had just rushed to the destroyer who was knocked down by him, and was about to destroy his head, when suddenly he saw a light released from the destroyer's dark chest. Tony secretly cried out that it was not good, and dodged sideways, but was immediately kicked away by a heavy kick with a force comparable to that of the Hulk. Zelda learned from Tony, so the bird's defense is naturally very high. After blocking a laser, the bird's shield shook violently, and a wave rippled outward from the center, spreading the power of the laser. Although it blocked such a blow, but Yahaha panicked, because the shield was hit by the force, and was knocked off course. The second laser rushed towards the deviated gap, rubbing against the shield and attacking Zelda. Without thinking, Pepper stood in front of Zelda, and released a laser, which collided with the destroyer's light blue light, but one was thick and the other was thin, so Pepper's laser was quickly pressed back by the destroyer. Oh. Pepper felt something was wrong and shouted stupidly. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Link rushed over. When he came in front of the destroyer, he was not afraid of his hands being burned to ashes. He directly held the destroyer's head in his hand and pressed it from below to the position where the laser was fired from the destroyer's chest. At this time, the laser had been pressed to a distance of less than 50 centimeters from Pepper. The destroyer was attacking with all his strength and suddenly detected a companion. So he tried his best to gather energy, and the energy gathered in his chest could not be emitted, causing the destroyer's chest armor to suddenly change from black to burning red. Bang! The destroyer exploded. Link, holding a shield, was blown into the sky again. Affected by the shockwave, Zelda fell to the ground holding Pepper. Link just slid down from a high place on the shield. He saw that Tony's house was blown into ruins. In the center of the ruins were two corpses standing blankly. It was obviously the destroyer that exploded just now, and it had implicated his companions beside him. The power accumulated in his chest at that time was uncontrollable, and it was no longer something that the non-harm mechanism could remove. Link jumped down hurriedly, looking for Zelda in the countless ruins. As soon as he landed, he saw a pile of rubble next to him. Suddenly, the concrete block bounced off, and a flying bird shield transformed into a pot shape, floating into the air, revealing Zelda and Pepper lying underneath. Link rushed up and picked up Zelda. Zelda rubbed her head. "I'm fine." Pepper flew up and shouted, "I'm fine too." Link was ready to save Tony, but he saw Iron Man flying into the sky with a corpse-like destroyer in one hand. Tony inserted his 5 fingers into the back of the destroyer's head, instantly invaded the control center, and took away the destroyer's authority. Tony turned his hand, turned the destroyer's helmet towards himself, opened the visor, and revealed Tony's cold face. Tony said, "Ivan, you blew up my house." "Oh no, Link's house. I tell you, you messed with me, Tony Stark. No matter what tricks you have, just use them. I will step on you and defeat you thoroughly." Ivan's low laugh came from the destroyer's head. "Do you think you can beat me by defeating my 4 failed test subjects? I tell you, I have a legion." 2 days later, the whole New York will fall into darkness. Tony's face was terrible. "Jarvis, destroy the opponent's system." Jarvis' calm voice appeared on Ivan's computer. Suddenly, dozens of computers around Ivan suddenly burst into sparks, and the screens went black. In the darkness, Ivan yelled, "Asshole!" Tony picked up the disabled destroyer and fell to the ground. His face was very ugly, and he said, "I just hacked into Ivan's database." As expected, it was a legion. They were all monsters made of the Hulk's blood, covering and controlling mechas. This kind of combat power is enough to subvert this country and even the world. We must stop them. Link couldn't help but think of the experience of the battle with the Endless Guardian Legion 100 years ago, and he had a headache. But he quickly thought of Hawkeye, Natasha, Rogers, Banner and others. Link said calmly, "Since the other side has so many helpers, let's gather helpers too." Ivan said that the destroyer is a combination of the Hulk and you, but I don't think this stupid puppet can compare to the real Hulk. Then he said to Zelda, Princess, contact Banner. Tony opened his eyes. You mean, ask Hulk to be your helper? Link nodded. Tony shook his head hurriedly. No, no, no. This plan is too crazy, too dangerous, I like this plan too much. Tony also smiled wickedly. The appearance of Link made the Marvel world more dangerous. Even Hulk's blood was not destroyed and was used by outsiders. The current Ivan has transformed from a small villain into an existence that can endanger the whole world. At this time, Link and Zelda heard a sinister laugh at the same time. Zelda's face turned pale, and the two looked at each other with murderous expressions. Because the voice just now was Ganon, Link's sword made a chirping sound and trembled violently. He hurriedly looked around and pulled Zelda behind him. Tony didn't hear Ganon's whisper and asked hurriedly, what happened? Pepper also tilted his head to express his confusion. Link said in a deep voice, the princess and I just heard Ganon's voice. Tony exhaled. Has the big devil finally appeared? He really knows how to pick the time. It's when I'm tired. Jarvis said. Link, I don't feel any strong energy source around. Although Zelda looked ugly, she regained her composure. No, Ganon hasn't fully awakened yet. I can feel that his power is still dormant. But Link still didn't relax. Because the deterioration of the incident can no longer be explained by the butterfly effect. Among them, I'm afraid that Ganon's will is secretly distorting the already dangerous Marvel world. Ganon, if you don't vote, I will destroy the world. Thanks to book friend Lily Shooping for the reward support of 100 starting coins. Thanks to book friend Minecrafter for the reward support of 100 starting coins. Chapter 83 Assembly Whistle. Link briefly told Natasha what happened. Soon, Nick, Natasha, and Hawkeye drove over and saw that a corner of Tony's luxurious house had collapsed. Link and Pepper were sitting on the broken roof, enjoying the sea view and eating snacks in the breeze. Seeing Nick and the other two arriving, Link supported himself with his arms and jumped down from a height, landing in front of the three. Natasha smiled and said, Link, you always jump around like this, and you will get hurt sooner or later. As for Nick, he said directly, there are always enemies around you. I'm a little used to it. Let me go and see the bodies of those destroyers. I have sent my people to control the Hammer Group. Link hurriedly said, let them retreat. It's too dangerous. Nick pouted and rubbed Link's hair, but was pushed away by Link. Nick put his hands in his windbreaker, looked around the dilapidated building, and said, you have to trust my men. Each of them can stand on their own. Speaking of Tony, oh. He just turned his head to look at Link and heard a scream. A red and yellow figure fell from the upstairs and knocked Nick down. Nick screamed oh and fell to the ground. His face puffed up and turned purple. Tony's voice came from him. Really, the destroyer can still react without a brain. Fortunately, I'm wearing a battle suit. Oh, long time no see, Nick. When did you appear under my body? Tony climbed up and wanted to pull Nick, but Nick kept shouting, stop, stop, stop. My waist is sprained. Iron Man is so heavy, it must be uncomfortable to be hit. Natasha came over and squatted, checking Nick's back, with a difficult look on her face. Link stepped forward, and Natasha asked Link, do you have a solution? Nick said sullenly, Link, help me heal my back, and I will punch Tony's mouth into his tonsils when I get up. Tony moved away and said fearfully, ask Link to heal you. You. Nick asked, what's wrong, Link? Oh. The purple-red face turned pale in an instant. Actually, it should be great to be more appropriate. Without saying anything, Link aimed his palm at the back and rubbed and grabbed, immediately restoring Nick's tense muscles and slightly dislocated joints. Because it was too sudden and too fast, Nick's reaction was violent, just like being electrocuted, shaking all over and sweating in pain. Nick gasped heavily, Link, I didn't do anything to let you down, okay? Tony cheered from the side. Link is a man of action. He won't be like a pediatric doctor who gives you an injection and then chats with you to distract your attention. Nick propped himself up and nodded. I feel relieved. Link, you're really good. Of course, I really don't want you to help me like this anymore. Tony, what do you mean by jumping down from the sky to hit me? Tony knocked on the reactor on his chest. I was knocked down by a zombie monster with one punch. Damie, help me move the destroyer down. With a loud bang, Tony's face changed and a corpse was thrown down from the second floor. Before Nick could sit up, he was knocked to the ground by the destroyer again. Hawkeye and Natasha glared at Tony. Tony spread his hands innocently and turned back to shout, "Dammy, I will definitely tear you apart. I asked you to move it down, not throw it down. Your temper is becoming more and more like Link's." The three moved the destroyer away, and Link stepped forward. Nick shouted, "Wait. This time I will take my time. You don't have to." Feeling a pain in his waist, he fell to the ground. This time Link simply used his fist to cut it down, and Nick shook like a fish coming ashore. Tony moved the body of the destroyer, fiddled with it left and right, and reactivated the destroyer, who let out a muffled roar. Natasha hurriedly took out her gun, and was ready for battle. Tony shrugged, "Don't worry, I have changed the status of this destroyer to friendly. Now I have given this guy a new name, called Redeemer. Of course, you can also shoot, and test the physical fitness of the Redeemer." Natasha fired 5 bullets in a row. Tony whistled. Because the bullets were aimed so precisely, all in one line, hitting the same spot exactly, a piece of flesh on the neck, that was not covered by armor, the bullets were stacked up, and the power was doubled. Natasha's wrists and shoulders were almost motionless. But even so, the Redeemer's skin was not injured at all. Natasha opened her mouth slightly. Her gun was customized and powerful, but it couldn't hurt the Redeemer. Tony explained, the Redeemer's various power parameters are basically the same as the Hulk, but Link thinks the Hulk is stronger. Then he said in a low voice, "As for Hammer, there is a legion." Nick held his waist and stood up. Seeing the powerful power of the destroyer, he immediately said to Natasha, "Call Carlson and the others, and tell them to come back quickly." At this time, the phone rang, and Carlson's number was displayed on Natasha's phone. She answered the phone, her eyes fixed, and she said softly, "Take good care of your injuries." Then she hung up the phone, her face heavy, except Carlson and a few agents. The rest are all dead. Carlson also recorded a video. Natasha pointed her phone at Nick. In the video recording, there was chaos, all kinds of inhuman roars and screams echoing. The picture was dim, or a strong light, only a few blurry tall figures and the sound of flesh and blood being torn apart could be seen. Hawkeye's eyes released anger. Natasha added, "The military has also been wiped out. Roday's war machine has been seized." Tony's face also became gloomy. Link whispered, "Ordinary armies can't defeat Ivan's destroyer core. It can only be us. Iron Man and I." And Zelda suddenly ran out and said with a smile, "Link, I contacted Mr. Banner. Bruce Banner fled everywhere. He had severe persecution delusions. Not to mention others, he didn't even trust himself. The only exception is this lovely and sincere student." Banner even told Zelda his practice method, which he had not told his girlfriend Betty, currently broken up. When he heard that Zelda needed help, he immediately agreed. But then his face turned bitter, and he looked at the dimly lit slums outside the window. He was in India. "I should ask Zelda to borrow some money for the plane later." Link took the phone and said softly, "Thank you, Banner. Thank you also to the Hulk in your body." A roar came from Banner's body. Banner was startled and said in a daze, Oh, the Hulk should be saying hello to you just now." Tony took the phone from Link's hand and smiled. "Hey, Dr. Banner, I admire your research papers and thinking roots. I'm Tony Stark. Welcome to join my Mono team. Please tell me the contact address. I will send someone to pick you up immediately and look forward to working with you." Tony is such a thoughtful person. Tony looked around. We are still missing a guy who likes to wear tight clothes. Ahaha. I've already contacted Rogers. Pepper Puff flew over with his phone. Tony pouted. He felt a little jealous that Pepper and Rogers had such a good relationship. "Humph, I bought all your phones." At this time, Rogers had just hung up the phone and smiled in confusion. "That little guy actually asked me to play baseball. Can he catch it with his hands?" The war begins. Are you ready to recommend the superheroes? Thank you to my book friend Lily Shooping for the 100 starting coins reward support. Thank you to my book friend Shang Long for the 100 starting coins reward support. Thank you to all the book friends for your recommendation votes. Thank you for recognizing my efforts. Chapter 84 Test Subject. New York is now in chaos, and the military is helping the people of New York to evacuate as soon as possible. Overnight, New York has become a dark city with stray dogs and cats roaming around. Although the people of the Hammer Group and the internal saboteurs have been sitting still after repelling the invading S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and the military, as if they are waiting for something and hiding in the company, even if they are motionless, New York has already been in chaos. Hammer, with a bunch of gun-wielding men in suits, stormed into Ivan's room, kicked things and roared, "What have you done? Who told the destroyers to attack the military? He is our business partner. Let's kill them. How can we do business with the military in the future?" Ivan curled his lips into a smile. A hint of red light flashed in his eyes. He whispered, "What? You're still thinking about doing business? Our army is enough to dominate the world." "Enough," Hammer shouted. "I finally see it. You're a sociopath with a freak mentality. I just want to kill Tony, but you want to fill the whole world with fear. I'm going to fire you." Ivan fiddled with the bird food in his hand, still teasing his white parrot, raised one eyebrow, glanced at Hammer. "What can you do now?" Hammer pointed his finger at his chest and shouted, "Someone, kill this nasty Russian for me. Quickly. What are you standing there for?" When Hammer turned around, he found that the people he brought with him were motionless, with strange expressions, staring at him. Hammer couldn't help but shuddered and said angrily, "Didn't you hear me? Kill Ivan." As a result, the men in suits around him were expressionless, pulled out their pistols, and pointed them at Hammer. Hammer opened his eyes wide and gritted his teeth. "A bunch of bastards. They took my money and don't help me." At this moment, Ivan stood up with a strange laugh. "Why do you think these guys are still human?" Hammer looked at Ivan in a daze, his pupils trembling. Ivan continued, "Since I can use the device to control the brains of monsters, ordinary humans are naturally a piece of cake." The backs of the heads of the men in suits around him were all inserted with metal devices like spider legs, piercing into the backs of their heads to control the men in suits. Hammer was horrified and said in a trembling voice, "Ivan, I saved you." Ivan walked up and whispered, "Yes, you saved me and helped me get my pet. I'm very grateful to you." Hammer's expression just relaxed, and then he was frightened by Ivan's other words. Ivan's eyes flashed with a strange red light, and he smiled. "I will make you my most powerful puppet." Hammer panted violently and wanted to escape, but the four men in suits immediately grabbed Hammer's limbs. Hammer screamed, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me?" But soon, Ivan was annoyed by the noise, and the man in the suit covered Hammer's mouth with his hand. Hammer struggled, unable to roar, and frantically bit the man in the suit with his teeth. After biting, a stream of blood spurted out of his mouth. Hammer felt sick and vomited, and then he was stunned, because his mouth was full of green blood. Ivan, holding a toothpick in his mouth, laughed dryly. "You will be my most important test subject. Feel honored." Let alone the Hammer Group, which has become a gloomy haunted house. Link and others are driving fast, heading to the New York City. They just drove into the city against the chaotic crowd of refugees. There are fewer and fewer people ahead. The city is getting emptier, and everyone's mood is gloomy. Nick looked at the reports that kept coming in his notebook. His face was so heavy that it seemed like oil could drip out. Natasha looked out the window. The prosperous New York has become an empty city. In the past, the city was full of people, and it didn't feel strange. But when everyone evacuated, the dark houses were like corpses that had been drained of blood, standing in the turbid night, extremely gloomy, like a super large haunted house. Nick said, "Let's go to the underground base of S.H.I.E.L.D. in New York. My people have settled Rogers there, and are waiting for us." Link asked, "Does S.H.I.E.L.D. have any secret weapons?" Link actually wanted to ask whether the aircraft carrier has been built. Nick shook his head. "There is a great ship, but it is still under construction. I can't tell you anything else." Hawkeye sat in the co-pilot seat with his arms folded, while Natasha, Link, Zelda, and Pepper sat in the back of the car. Tony was flying in the sky, calling the panicked Pepper. Natasha saw Pepper looking out the window in fear, but Link and Zelda were very calm. You know, they had just experienced a wave of panicked people, and innocent people were urged to leave by the military. The traffic was so crowded that it seemed like a war. Anyone who saw it would be driven by the strong panic outside and become panic-stricken. Natasha thought she had a higher psychological quality, but she was also upset at the moment. But when she turned around, she saw Link sitting quietly and peacefully in his seat, curiously looking at the scenery outside the window, without any trace of fear. Seeing Link standing still, Natasha's mood inexplicably calmed down, and she asked curiously, "Link, aren't you afraid?" Link smiled and shook his head. Although the empty city looked gloomy and spooky, as scary as the end of the world, it was just New York City after all, not the real end of the world. This small scene didn't scare Link. He and Zelda had experienced worse events 100 years ago. Nick drove into an underground parking garage and stopped the car. He saw Captain America fully armed, holding a shield, standing on the roadside waiting for them. Link got out of the car holding Peppa. Roger smiled apologetically at Peppa. "The baseball game will be a few days later. I'm afraid I won't have time recently." Peppa tilted his head, not knowing why Rogers apologized to him. But Peppa was a very generous person, so he pulled the leaf bamboo dragonfly, flew in front of Rogers, patted Rogers on the head, and said that I, Peppa, forgive you. Tony also flew into the parking garage, landed on the ground, and opened the mask. Tony said, "Okay, we'll wait for Banner, and then everyone will be gathered. But before that, who will accompany me on an adventure to the Hammer Fair to gather some intelligence? Is there any brave man who would like to sign up?" "Yeah, haha." Peppa stood above Rogers and raised his hand happily. Rogers frowned. "Stark, now is not the time to be willful. Everyone must act in unison." Tony raised his eyebrows, and suddenly his voice became a little lower. "Since we have to act in unison, of course we need a leader. Shall we have a fair election? Please vote and collect." Thanks to book friend Lily Water Bottle for the 100 starting coins reward support. Thanks to book friend Minecrafter for the 100 starting coins reward support. Thank you all book friends for voting and supporting. Thank you for recognizing my efforts. Welcome to join the Attic Night Talk Book Fan Exchange Group chat number 783,563,733. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 85 Avengers Assemble. In the last Happy Volleyball game, Tony and Rogers were teammates. They fought side by side against Link, but were strongly suppressed by Link. So the two did not strengthen their friendship because of their cooperation. On the contrary, because of some fan art on the internet, Rogers now feels uncomfortable when he sees Tony. Why is Tony the stronger party in the fan art? Tony looked at Rogers provocatively, walked over calmly, and said, "It's not that I have to be in the limelight, but I don't want to hear someone pretending to be the boss and giving blind orders when I'm about to die in the battle. Let's not talk about Banner for now, let's discuss who will be the leader of this team." Nick said, "Aren't you cold in the garage? Let's go to the base first." Natasha crossed her arms and stared at Tony. "I choose the captain." Hawkeye said in a deep voice, "Me too." Tony shrugged. "Well, it seems that I'm not very popular, but it doesn't matter. Link, Zelda, what about you?" Tony and Link have the best relationship, and he is quite confident that Link will choose him. As a result, Link said without hesitation, "I choose the princess." Tony. Natasha chuckled, and Hawkeye couldn't help laughing. Rogers raised his eyebrows and shrugged like Tony. Link was very calm. "Nonsense. Since we have to choose a leader, of course we should choose Zelda, the noblest heir to the kingdom of Hyrule, the princess of the Hylians, the holder of the Triforce, the hero who sealed Ganon, and the inheritor of the goddess blessing. Who else?" Zelda was a little flustered. She stood on tiptoe and said hurriedly, "Then I choose Link." Peppa jumped left and right on Roger's head and shouted, "I choose the brave man." "Okay." Tony's eyes lit up, and he snapped his fingers. "Then I choose Link too." The minority obeys the majority. It's settled. Nick rolled his eyes. Boring. Several people came to the base, and Nick said, "Except for a few agents who stayed, the rest of the people have all evacuated. The military plans to assemble the navy to directly cover and destroy those monsters with firepower." Of course, the price is too heavy. New York will be finished, and the world's economy will regress 10 years before the worst solution is taken. We can only rely on what I think is stupid personal heroism. Entrust the safety of the world to a few brave, capable, and wise heroes. This is also my original intention of planning the Avengers. I hope you can shoulder the burden on your shoulders. Of course, I also know that this is very dangerous and hard. Nick felt that it would be even better with some tragic background music at this moment. Then he turned around and saw Link and his friends sitting at the table, eating hamburgers in a depressed mood. Natasha took a small bite and then quietly drank instant coffee. Hawkeye's wrinkled face looked even uglier because the hamburger was so bad. Tony had bought it for $100,000 in a hamburger shop without an owner. Pepper was happily eating strawberries. Nick was so angry that his face turned black and he shouted, "You guys are eating so happily." As a result, Pepper was scared by this shout. His two little hands shook and the half-eaten strawberry fell to the ground and rolled dirty. Pepper's nose twitched and he cried out of heartache. Nick immediately ran over with a smile and whispered, "Don't cry, don't cry. Little baby, Uncle is not mean to you." He teased Pepper in a flattering way. Although Nick looked like a one-eyed pirate who was not easy to mess with, he actually loved these cute creatures. Behind them, Banner's gentle but a little tired voice came, "It seems I'm late." Zelda was delighted, turned around and ran to Banner, shouting happily, "Teacher, you are finally here." Then she hesitated a little because Banner had changed a lot. Originally a very handsome young man, now he has a lot of white hair, his face has aged a lot, and even a little out of shape. It seems that living in fear day and night has made Banner suffer enough. Banner was wearing a loose old clothes, and his waist was a little bulging. Banner laughed dryly and glanced at the agents behind him who were holding guns and waiting for battle, and said, "Can these people take their guns away? I need to calm down." Link's face sank. Tony was also unhappy. "I was going to invite Dr. Banner to come over." "Nick, you said that your people would escort him. What does your shield mean by escorting? Just point your guns from the Indian subcontinent across the Pacific Ocean to North America?" Nick swept his hands, and several trembling agents immediately put away their guns and left quickly. He came to apologize to Banner. "I'm sorry. I hope you can understand the fear in my people's hearts." Zelda was rarely angry, but Pepper won't be afraid. Ahaha. Pepper came over curiously and climbed to Banner's shoulder with a grunt, seeming to like Banner very much. Pepper happily pointed at Banner. "He is the same as me, green." Zelda. Banner also smiled and touched Pepper. In order to take care of Banner's mood, Zelda decided not to tell Pepper why he liked him. Nick said, "Now that everyone is here, we should discuss the specific tactics." He stopped talking because Tony enthusiastically invited Banner to sit down and chat with Banner. Link silently handed Banner a burger. Banner was already hungry, so he and Link ate the burger. Link was already the ninth one. Tony snorted. "It seems that your people didn't even give Banner any food along the way. Are they afraid that Banner will bite off their hands?" Rogers and others also greeted Banner. They were not as relaxed as Link and Tony towards Banner. Nick said, "Okay, while we are eating, should we discuss the tactics of destroying this legion against Ivan and Hammer?" Tony interrupted again. "By the way, Democratic election. Banner, we are choosing who will be the boss of the team. You and the Hulk in your body have 2 votes. Will you vote for me or for Link?" He deliberately skipped Rogers. Banner didn't understand what was going on. He was still very restrained when he first arrived here, so he said, "Link is ready." Tony clapped his hands together and said, "2 decisive votes. Our leader is born. Little brat Link." Pepper was unhappy and kicked Tony in the face. Tony shouted, "You little bastard. Are you addicted to being a bully?" Then he pulled Pepper off his face and shook it hard like a cocktail. Hawkeye was a little impatient and was about to speak. At this time, Link said softly, "We don't need to deal with the entire Destroyer Corps. We just need to kill their controller, Ivan. This is the first day of the picture promotion. Please collect it. The new book needs results. Please help me." Thank you for the 200 starting coins reward from Lily Shooping. Thank you for your recommendation votes. Thank you for recognizing my efforts. Welcome to join the Attic Night Talk Book Fan Exchange Group chat number 783,563,733. Chapter 86. On the verge of breaking out. Link folded the wrapper of his food into a neat little piece in his hand. He continued, the destroyer must be controlled by a human to act. We just need to find Ivan and catch him, and then we can control the entire destroyer. After he and Tony defeated the destroyer, they had already figured out how to deal with the destroyer core. Link organized his words and said, we need 2 people to sneak in and control Ivan. No sophisticated arrangements are needed. Hawkeye then said, you guys attract attention. Link and I will go in and assassinate Ivan with bows and arrows. Rogers flipped through the map of New York. He was not used to using a tablet and pondered, given the size of the destroyer, if you and Link accidentally encounter the destroyer inside, once a fight breaks out, you will be buried in the building. So we need people outside to lure the snake out of its hole. Tony clapped his hands. That's right. Rogers, you are responsible for shouting righteous slogans, while Banner and I will use firepower to attract the destroyer. Surfer touched Peppa's head, frowned and said, but we don't have many people. It's too risky to rely on Teacher Banner and Tony alone. Tony looked at Link. It's a bit of a waste of talent to use such a big killer to sneak around and do assassination work. Why not just have a big battle with Banner and me? Link, then. Natasha smiled and said, Barton and I will go inside to assassinate Ivan. Ivan is just an ordinary person. Peppa swayed in Zelda's arms and said in a tender voice, what am I doing? Zelda smiled and rubbed Peppa's 2 tentacles. Don't run anywhere. Just stay with me. I will protect you. Nick, the main problem now is how to use Hulk well. Banner was a little unhappy and shook his head. I will try my best to control him. After all, Hulk is prone to accidents. If things go wrong, the destroyer core will have another strong man. The Hulk will turn around and attack Rogers, Tony and others. Link said, leave Hulk to me to control. I'm more familiar with him. He had beaten him up. Nick stood up with the help of the table and said, then the Avengers will be established in front of this small dining table. Bang. There was a muffled collision sound from the ceiling. This is 20 meters underground, which means that something happened on the ground. Several people hurried to the monitoring room. The atmosphere inside was heavy and the agents looked very unhappy. The monitoring screen showed countless vandals wandering around New York and dark figures roaming in the dark city. Tony pointed his finger and said, turn to that screen. The agent responsible for monitoring that part of the screen was hesitating. Tony directly used the computer next to him to take away the system permissions. All the screens in the entire monitoring room turned into monitoring screens of the same area, the Hammer Expo. At the expo, there was no one under the stage, and all kinds of debris were in a mess. On the stage, since there was no one controlling it, only a few lights were turned on. Hammer himself used the speaker function of his mobile phone to dance a very cool dance and came to the center of the stage. Hammer shook his body, adjusted his clothes proudly, then opened his arms and shouted to the empty stage, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hammer Expo. A new era will kick off tonight. Tony folded his hands and frowned. Is this guy rehearsing? New York is empty. Where can he find an audience? But in his heart, he felt that Hammer in the picture seemed to have changed. The bad-hearted stupid look in the past disappeared, and his temperament became a little neurotic or crazy. Natasha turned to look at Hawkeye. Barton, did you see if there was something on Hammer's back when he came? Hawkeye nodded. Inside Hammer's suit, a square cover-like thing bulged. At this time, countless roars suddenly came. The surveillance screen paused heavily, and hundreds of dark destroyers fell from the sky under the empty stage, with dark red breathing lights flashing on their chests. I'm afraid these are Hammer's audience. Hammer grinned, and his neck turned violently. He looked at the surveillance camera with a ghostly smile, just like a puppet in a haunted house. The screen aimed at Hammer showed Hammer's crazy and dull smile. Hammer shouted, Tony, I know you are looking at me. Peppa covered his eyes in fear. Rogers came over and smiled at Zelda. He took Peppa from Zelda, grabbed Peppa's waist, and made Peppa face him. Rogers smiled and said, Peppa, you are wearing armor now. You are also a warrior. Be brave. Do you understand? Peppa held his head and nodded. Tony also pursed his lips. This guy. Hammer continued, it's just the beginning. Have you seen my legion? I will flood this country. Tony suddenly realized that this tone of speaking is not Hammer at all, but Ivan. Hammer suddenly ripped off his suit, revealing his deformed body. As if he was burned, his skin twisted like an organ, and from behind, a parasitic mechanical device covered Hammer's back, and the pipe was inserted into Hammer's ribs. Natasha said with an incredible disgust, Ivan actually modified Hammer into a destroyer. Hammer, who was controlled by Ivan, roared, "This is my newly developed weapon. Hammer-type human weapon. RRR." He let out an inhuman roar, and soon the screen went black. Hammer shattered the surrounding cameras with sound waves. A handsome and iron-blooded agent was frightened by Hammer's roar and suddenly collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. I have asthma. Ha. 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 Heavy panting. Another person's panting sounded again, and Tony wondered, "You shield have so many asthma patients," Rogers roared. "It's Banner." Everyone was in chaos, and looked at Banner. Hammer's roar just now obviously angered the Hulk in Banner's body. These destroyers, the human weapons transformed by Hammer, were all made of Hulk's blood. Hulk instinctively hates these monsters. Banner couldn't control himself all of a sudden. His eyes became crazy, his blood instantly turned green, and spread all over his body, and his muscles expanded instantly like the magma spreading under a volcano. Hulk roared to the sky, and broke the ceiling above his head. Hawkeye and Natasha pulled out their guns, and Rogers held a shield in front of Zelda. Everyone was obviously shocked by the Hulk's transformation. The war has begun. Please vote. Please collect. Thanks to book friend Lily Aquarius for the reward of 100 starting coins. Welcome to join the Attic Night Talk Book Fan Exchange Group. Group chat number 783,563,733. Chapter 87. The base was attacked. Hawkeye and Natasha pulled out their guns, while Rogers held a shield in front of Zelda. Everyone was obviously shocked by Hulk's transformation, and they were facing a great enemy. However, this had the opposite effect. Hulk saw someone pointing a weapon at him, and suddenly he couldn't suppress his anger and shouted, "Roar!" Agent Hill, who was already injured, was directly shocked by the sound wave, and vomited blood, and fell to the ground. Link hurriedly stepped forward and shouted, "Hulk! They won't hurt you." Rogers shouted, "Link, be careful." Tony wiped the sweat from his head and muttered, "It feels like Link is playing with fire." Link smiled and shook his head. After the last encounter, Hulk should not be hostile to him. Link came in front of the Hulk and said, "I promise you, they won't hurt you." Before Link could even finish his words, a gunshot suddenly came from behind. Link's face turned pale, and he looked a little embarrassed. Hulk roared and swept Link away, and hit him against the wall. Link hit the wall head first, and stars appeared in his eyes. Just when Nick was about to turn around and yell who fired the gun, he heard the agent who fired the gun yell in fear, "There is an enemy." Something pitch black suddenly ran through the ventilation duct just now. Rogers hurriedly said, "It could also be a black cat." He rushed forward desperately to fight the Hulk first. Tony shouted, "Wait. Don't be so anxious." When the Hulk stared at Rogers angrily, a roar came. The Hulk flew out with a snap, hit the wall, and fell on his shoulders. Everyone looked at the top of their heads anxiously, fearing that the underground base would collapse. Nick screamed, "Link." It turned out that Link kicked the Hulk with a flying kick, and actually kicked the Hulk away. It was not the first time that he was thrown around by the Hulk. Every time he got along with the Hulk, he would get hurt, which made Link very annoyed. Link ran to Hulk, raised his eyebrows, and shouted, "You want to be beaten?" Hulk roared, but then he was timid and shook his head. "Hulk won't fight." Link shouted, "Apologize." Hulk said sullenly, "I'm sorry." He still looked very aggrieved, threw the stone on his leg away, and sulked. "Okay, stand up." Link pulled Hulk to stand up. This kick and scolding forced Hulk to soften. That's Hulk, a destroyer that everyone fears. Link walked in front, and Hulk followed behind him with his head down. This scene made everyone stunned. Link still threatened Hulk, "Next time you are rough and hit me back and forth, I will beat your face swollen." Rumble. There was a sound of something crawling quickly in the pipe, which made the atmosphere in the dim monitoring room even more weird. Rogers said, "I'll go and see." He was about to climb into the pipe to look. Suddenly, the ventilation duct suddenly split open, and a thin black shadow rushed down, grabbed an agent, and quickly went in, like a lizard's tongue. Rogers shouted, "Don't run." He quickly jumped up, grabbed the agent's legs, and pulled down desperately, but he could only hear the agent screaming. Rogers' feet were off the ground, and he couldn't use any strength, so he was also pulled into the duct. Hawkeye immediately drew his bow and shot an arrow. The arrow flew through the duct, and the sound of the gust of wind suddenly hit the flying arrow, and it was silent. Then he heard Rogers shouting, and the ventilation duct below broke, and a huge fist stretched out, and Rogers jumped down holding the dying agent. Behind Rogers, a soft thing like a black snail fell down. Natasha went forward to check, then quickly stepped back 3 steps. Her expression was very shocked. It's a person, but the body is like a snake, without a single bone. Tony glanced at the black corpse and immediately shouted, "Ivan has discovered this place. Get out of the secret passage." But just as Tony finished speaking, he heard a rustling sound from outside the door, and the door was knocked open. Everyone's scalp was numb, and they saw many black boneless bodies crawling out like a group of snakes, and quickly crawling in. Nick made a prompt decision and immediately took out a rifle from under the computer desk next to him, and fired at the monster pile. The rifle's flames splashed, and it swept down, repelling a wave of black boneless bodies. The screen suddenly showed the image of Ivan, who sneered, "The boneless, the humanoid weapon that I developed like a venomous snake." Several agents fired with guns, but the attack range was obviously not enough to completely cover the offensive of the boneless. Many fish that slipped through the net quickly slid out, twisting and squirming on the ground, stretching out their bodies like snakes, grabbing the people in front of them, wrapping them up in an instant, and then squeezing them hard, with a bone crackling sound that made people's teeth ache. Unfortunately, one of the boneless people found the wrong person. He quickly crawled and pounced on Link. Hulk was beside him, and saw 2 cold lights coming out with his peripheral vision, and the boneless person was instantly broken into 3 pieces. Link was seen holding 2 long swords, and both long swords were trembling, making a pleasant sword chant. Link shouted, "You go. I'll stop them." Ha. The 2 swords both rolled out sword flowers. Thin ice rose under his feet, and he quickly slid into the pile of boneless people. The 2 swords danced into a phantom, and the surrounding boneless people were instantly broken into 2 pieces and stopped moving. Link was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, there were dead bodies all over the ground under his feet. The sword dance with both hands was airtight, and the blood of his companions and the heat from Link's body immediately attracted a large number of boneless people. Rogers organized everyone to evacuate. Seeing Tony motionless in his iron suit, he immediately shouted, "Go, don't let Link's sacrifice go to waste." Tony smiled and said, "From what you said, I thought Link was dead. But Link is too inefficient." He saw that most people had evacuated. He turned on the thrusters under his feet and came to Hulk. Hulk was frantically beating the boneless people who came in, and his hands were sticky. Tony felt a little nauseous, and he said, "Hulk, how about we do something bigger?" Hulk was puzzled. Tony shouted, "One person, one wall, destroy this underground base." Hulk didn't understand many words, but the word destruction was very kind. He immediately nodded awkwardly. Tony circled around Hulk and helped Hulk clean up the boneless people who crawled over. Hulk shouted, used both hands, and punched the wall one after another like a piston. The load-bearing wall collapsed directly. Tony shouted, "It's me next." He released lasers from his hands, blasting the wall. The other load-bearing wall also collapsed. Tony smiled and said, "Good job. Now only the top of the head is left." "Wait, Hulk. Link is still in there. Crush you to death." Hulk only heard the first half of Tony's sentence and immediately punched the ceiling. This underground base finally couldn't withstand the destruction of the Hulk and began to collapse completely. After the Hulk finished beating, he realized that Link was still in the front to attract the boneless, and immediately panicked and shot his head with both hands. The ceiling collapsed quickly, and Link looked up blankly. "Hurry, hurry, hurry." Tony quickly rushed to Link, took Link's arms, turned around, and rushed out. Tony hugged Link, and rushed into the secret passage with Hulk. The underground base behind him collapsed, covering the hundreds of boneless people. Thanks to the book friend Lily Shooping for awarding 100 starting coins. Thanks to all the book friends for your recommendation votes. Welcome to join the Attic Night Talk Book Lovers Exchange Group chat number 783,563,733. Chapter 88. A melee. Iron Man rushed out holding Link, followed by Hulk. They found everyone standing at the exit of the passage. Tony shouted, "What are you doing standing there?" But as soon as Tony rushed out, he was also surprised to see thousands of destroyers gathered neatly like an army, surrounding the shield people. Tony shouted, "Hulk, do you still need blood regularly?" Then he saw a deformed person walking in the distance. His muscles grew abnormally, making his body proportions particularly hideous. His shoulders were like dry wood, almost connected to his head. He was so twisted that he looked like the villain Toguro in Yu Yu Hakusho, Tony Stark. Tony was shocked. "Ivan?" He landed and stared at this deformed person in a daze. Thrusters and other weapons were installed on his limbs. Because his muscles were still growing slowly, it looked as if these devices were embedded in Ivan's body. Natasha was very disgusted. "You not only transformed others into monsters, but also yourself." Ivan's voice became deeper and deeper. "I like this kind of power. I can do anything now." He stared at Hulk with an increasingly dead look. "You are a failure, but I used your blood to create a more perfect self." Hulk roared wildly, rushed forward quickly, and brought a gust of wind under his feet, even knocking Nick to the ground. The ground shook violently, and Hulk flew into the sky, stretched his body, and punched Ivan in the face. This punch was powerful enough to smash the rock giant that had plagued New York before. However, something unimaginable happened. Link cried out in a voiceless voice, "No way." As for the others, they looked at him, as if they had seen the end of the world. Ivan did not dodge or evade when Hulk punched with all his strength and stretched out his arm. "Grab it." Ivan gently grabbed Hulk's fist. Hulk's body stopped in the air, and the accumulated momentum was dissipated in an instant. Ivan smiled disdainfully, but his face was full of muscles, so the smile was very forced, just like a wound tearing across his face. "A loser is a loser, ha." An uppercut hit Hulk's stomach, as if it had stabbed into Hulk's body, and Hulk's face turned even greener. "Do you think you can beat me by hiring a green monster? He can't even beat my destroyer." Ivan threw Hulk into the team of destroyers, and the destroyers came over like man-eating ants that smelled blood. Hawkeye winked at Natasha, and Natasha took out a small bottle from the hidden pocket on the inside of her boots. She injected the colorless and tasteless liquid into one of her arrows. Hawkeye whispered to Link, "I have coated the arrow with the most poisonous poison in the world. Help me distract Ivan. I will kill Ivan." Tony behind Link said, "It seems that the plan discussed before cannot be implemented. Let's have a one-on-one duel." He flew into the sky and said to Ivan, "Why do I see that your body is still expanding? Let me tell you, if fruits and vegetables grow too fast, they will leave. The same is true for people." Ivan grabbed a destroyer and threw it at Tony. Tony swung his body and dodged. The destroyer directly collapsed a corner of the building behind him. Tony looked back and broke into a cold sweat. Because Ivan was so fast, Jarvis didn't react. But when he turned around, he saw Ivan's hideous face rushing in front of him. Tony changed color and rushed into the sky, and Ivan's thrusters installed on his legs were immediately activated and chased into the sky. Ivan yelled, "Destroyers, attack. Destroy them." The destroyers, who had been standing still like an army, yelled and rushed forward. Agent Hill woke up after hearing the shouts. Seeing that there were a lot of enemies around him, he fainted again. Rogers held a shield and yelled, "Let's go." The surroundings immediately pressed over like a black tide. The destroyers waved electric whips and fist drills, and rushed forward screaming. Several agents screamed and died at the feet of the destroyers. Tony shouted in the sky, "The destroyer's weakness is the connection between the helmet and the back of the neck. Attack there." He was chased by Ivan in the sky, and his hands randomly released light, sweeping on the ground, and he could help as much as he could. Rogers held a shield, and was immediately hit by a punch from the destroyer. His body shook, his chest was wide open, and he was about to be hit by an electric whip. Nick pulled out a grenade from his windbreaker and threw it at the destroyer, which exploded with a bang and burst of flames. But the destroyer shook and was not hurt at all. Rogers was also engulfed by shrapnel and flames. Nick muttered, "I killed Captain America. but as the flames dispersed, a shield blocked Captain America. A large piece of ice covered his entire body. It was Zelda's bird. Link pressed his hands on the ground, and a circle of thin ice around him quickly spread out, covering the entire venue. Link shouted, "Go back to the passage." He first slashed a destroyer who rushed up with a sword, and then threw 2 bombs into the destroyer crowd, which exploded with a bang. Then he threw 2 more bombs, blowing up another area. Link's bombs were very weak, and ordinary people would not die if they dodged properly, but this kind of bomb had a special effect, that is, a strong repelling ability. The destroyers affected by the aftermath of the bomb swayed, and because of the slippery thin ice under their feet, they fell down. Roar. Hulk suddenly tore off a destroyer, and jumped out from the destroyers. With a punch and a kick, he also knocked down a large area of destroyers. Link slid quickly on the ice, frequently using his sword, so fast that even Link felt pain in his shoulder. The swords were connected, and he forced the first wave of destroyers to retreat. Link panted and shouted, "Go back to the passage. Peppa, take the princess back." "Ah. Yes." Peppa lifted Zelda's clothes by the shoulders, and lifted her into the air. Although Zelda was about the same height as Link, she was much lighter, because she didn't have as much muscle as Link, so she was dragged back to the passage by Peppa. A group of people hurriedly retreated to the passage. Link saw a bus in his peripheral vision, and shouted to Hulk, "Hulk, use that bus to cover the hole." Hulk was simple-minded, and didn't understand what was going on. Link fought off a wave of vandals and hurriedly used the magnetic grabber to pull the bus. With Link's strength, it was impossible to lift the bus, so Link used the magnetic grabber to push the bus over here, and the tires turned, and it quickly came to Hulk's side. Link panted and yelled, "Take the bus, block the hole." Chapter 89, Skating Operation. Hulk finally understood, lifted the bus, grabbed it by the head, and threw it towards the entrance of the secret passage, blocking the entrance. But at the moment, when the entrance was sealed, 3 figures rushed out quickly. It was Natasha, Rogers, and Hawkeye. Rogers shouted, "We can't squat in the secret passage with our heads in our arms waiting for you to rescue us." He took out his shield, and went to meet the destroyer. He slid down, and kicked the destroyer to the ground. Rogers had been through many battles, and had strong practical experience. After watching how Link dealt with the enemy, he immediately found the trick. First use the slippery thin ice to trip the destroyer, and then look for a flaw to attack. After the destroyer fell, Rogers dodged a lightning whip without hesitation, scratched the destroyer's head, and smashed it at the neck. Link held the sword in both hands, and fought against the 2 destroyers, trying to use the mechanism of the destroyers not hurting each other to attack each other. But it was obvious that Ivan had removed this mechanism from these monsters in time. The destroyers can also attack each other. Link hid behind a saboteur. Another saboteur, holding a high-speed drill, did not dodge or evade, but broke the saboteur's chest. He emerged from his back, swelling blood, and attacked Link. Link's eyes were covered by the blood that suddenly splashed out, and he couldn't see clearly for a while, but he knew there was danger ahead, so he did a backflip. He dodged, but after Link landed, his feet slipped, and he slid in front of a saboteur. Link rubbed his eyes and just saw clearly. He saw the saboteur with his arms clasped and smashed down. "Be careful." Natasha rushed forward quickly, stepped on the saboteur's knees, jumped on his head, and used her special dagger to pierce the back of the saboteur's head, killing him. Bang! She fell to the ground with the saboteur. Natasha stood up and smiled. "I'll pay you back." Before she finished speaking, Link rushed forward and hugged Natasha. The 2 of them overlapped and slid on the ice. And where Natasha was sitting just now, a saboteur swept down with an electric whip. If Link hadn't rescued her in time, Natasha would have been cut into 2 pieces. Link pulled Natasha up, and Natasha was a little unhappy. "I owe you another favor." At this time, Hawkeye roared, "And mine." An explosive arrow shot out suddenly, hitting a destroyer's neck, exploding and killing him. Hawkeye raised his chin, and Natasha made a face at Hawkeye. Before Hawkeye could react, he was knocked down by Rogers, who was holding a shield, and was knocked away. The 2 rolled into a ball. Hawkeye looked at the circle of destroyers around him, and they surrounded him again. Hawkeye struggled to stand up. "This mission is a bit difficult." Rogers moved his shoulders. "Be prepared to fight to the death." The Hulk roared, grabbed the legs of the two destroyers, and used them as two heavy hammers to sweep and knock down a group of them. Link took a look at the battle in the sky. Tony was chased by Ivan and lost his temper. He shot lasers with both hands, but he couldn't hurt Ivan. Instead, he consumed a lot of his energy. Link panted and saw the Hulk spinning and sweeping, and an idea came to his mind. So he shouted, "Quickly gather all the destroyers together." Link put away his two one-handed swords and took out the Guardian Greatsword. He stood on the ice and panted and simply closed his eyes. When Natasha saw Link's posture, she immediately reacted and shouted, "Link is brewing an attack. Quickly create a favorable output environment for him." Although the others didn't understand what Link was going to do, but out of trust in Link, using himself as bait, they quickly attracted a wave of enemies. Several people gathered from all sides, and all the destroyers also gathered. "Leave it to me." Link breathed steadily, opened his eyes, and rushed over quickly with the Guardian Greatsword. He came in front of the destroyers, held the hilt tightly with both hands, and danced and spun. Behind him, Darkle's light blue soul suddenly rose up and roared, "Defeat them, brother." Picked up the rock-crushing greatsword and swept along with Link's movements. Whoosh whoosh. Link grabbed the Guardian Greatsword like a windmill and swept it around with himself as the center. With the blessing of Darkle's power, the dark purple Guardian Greatsword in Link's hand turned into a fiery red. Link rushed into the destroyer like a sickle cutting into straw, with unstoppable force. Wherever the sword went, there were only screams and the sound of flesh tearing. Link felt that his energy tank was rapidly decreasing, and the power of his body was slipping away from the sword in his hand like a flood. However, he only turned twice. "No. Hold on a little longer." Link gritted his teeth and spun desperately. There was a vague tearing sound around him. The sword hit the object and passed through the object, and the slight resistance was transmitted from the touch of Link's hand to his brain. Darkle shouted, "Brother Link, your body is too heavy. You can't hold on if you continue like this." Link shouted, "Give me a little more strength." But as he spoke, he choked out a mouthful of blood. Darkle shook his head and disappeared. Link suddenly lost his strength and fell to the ground. The thin ice on the ground could no longer be maintained because of Link's weakness and melted away. Link tilted his head to look at his own results. He saw that wherever he passed, there was a mess and corpses fell on the ground, like a mountain range. He almost wiped out all the destroyer corps by himself. But there were still 3 destroyers alive. Ivan shouted, "Waste. Kill Link." Just as the 4 destroyers roared and rushed towards Link, Hawkeye and others quickly rushed to Link's side to protect him. Rogers shouted, "Leave it to us next." He threw the vibranium shield with a fierce throw, hitting the destroyer's neck, and bounced back and fell into Rogers' hands. At this moment, Rogers jumped high, holding the edge of the shield with both hands, just like smashing Tony's reactor in the Civil War, and smashed it hard on the destroyer's head. The two fell heavily to the ground. Hawkeye fired 2 explosive arrows in succession, directly blowing off the neck of the destroyer he was responsible for. Natasha deftly stepped on the destroyer's arm quickly, climbed onto the destroyer's shoulder, and stabbed it with a dagger. The remaining 2 destroyers also collapsed to the ground. Rogers panted, "Finally solved." Hawkeye calmly replaced the bow and arrow with the one he had injected with deadly poison before, and said, "There is only one left." Natasha looked for Tony's trace. Her face changed, and she saw Tony's Iron Man was hit by Ivan's electric whip in the air, and the Iron Man suit was torn into 2 pieces. Roger's pupils shrank, stark. The Hulk raised his head and roared, "Roar, roar, roar." Ivan was laughing. "Merry Christmas. Thank you all for your company. If you feel that the plot is a bit dull, or you feel unhappy somewhere, remember to tell the author. I'm here for everyone." Thank you for the reward of 100 starting coins from Lily Water Bottle. Thanks to Longling Shiankson for the 800 Kidian coins reward. Thanks to all the book friends for their recommendation votes. Chapter 90 Electric Shock. Hawkeye had good eyesight. Under Ivan's crackling string of dazzling electric lights, he saw a figure falling from the cracked armor in the sky. He immediately shouted, "Tony is not dead." Link struggled to stand up, but Rogers had already rushed over and caught Tony from the air, just like he had caught Link in the past. Rogers shouted, "Stark." But Tony's eyes were closed, and his face was pale. Rogers used his fingers to test his breath. There was none. He tested his heartbeat, but there was none. He looked up at Natasha and said, "Stark is dead." Link's face turned pale, and he stood up with his legs clenched, glaring at Ivan, who was still laughing wildly in the air. Natasha rushed over and shouted, "Wait. Tony can still be saved. He was just electrocuted and in a state of suspended animation. Give him artificial respiration." Natasha wanted to do it herself, but Rogers pinched Tony's nose and stretched out his mouth with a bit of disgust. When Rogers was frozen, artificial respiration in the West had not yet been popularized. After waking up, Rogers has been learning modern knowledge recently. With his temperament, he naturally pays attention to rescue when injured, so he learned relevant knowledge. Natasha originally planned to help Tony press his chest, but Tony's chest is an arc reactor, and cardiopulmonary resuscitation is impossible. Natasha's pressing will only cause the arc reactor deeply inserted into Tony's body to squeeze the organs and blood vessels inside the chest cavity and tear the part connecting the arc reactor and Tony's body. Hawkeye knows that Link and Tony have the best relationship and comforts him. "It's okay. Stark won't die that way. Calm down. Don't be impulsive in combat." "I'm calm." Link put on his hood to cover his sight. Looking at Ivan, who was laughing wildly in the air, he landed. Compared to when Ivan was flying, his body is even bigger. It seems that Ivan's hard muscles are still growing. In Link's keen perception, Ivan's breath is also more intense. Compared to the more powerful Ivan, Link had consumed a huge amount of energy in the battle to wipe out the destroyer core, which made Link feel very hungry. Hulk roared, and the muscles behind him squirmed like magma flow. He flew over and punched. Hulk's anger was rising, and his strength was several times stronger than before. He jumped up, and the wet floor shattered and sank into a big pit. Hulk's blow even produced a white sound barrier. But Ivan sneered. He put his shoulder back and punched Hulk casually. The two fists collided. Bang! Hawkeye's ears shook, and he felt a little short of breath. When Hulk and Ivan punched the center ground, the floor broke, and a circle of broken stone pieces rippled out. Even Tony, who was far away, was shaken, coughed violently, and woke up again. He saw Rogers' face approaching quickly and kissed him. Tony opened his eyes in horror, but Rogers, as a soldier, was very efficient and kissed him. He gave Tony, who had already woken up, but was still a little confused, a breath of air. Tony rolled his eyes and fainted again, because he couldn't bear the shock. Rogers looked up, a little surprised. "Just now, I seemed to see Stark open his eyes with my peripheral vision." Natasha shouted, "That means it's working. Keep going. You're tired. Let me do it." Rogers shook his head. "I won't get tired." He took a deep breath and smacked Tony's mouth again. Tony opened his eyes again in fear and shouted, okay, I'm awake. Thank you, Rogers. You are my savior. I'm back to normal now." Tony was at a loss and hurriedly turned around and crawled away from Rogers. He now felt a special gas on his mouth. Although as a soldier, Rogers paid special attention to hygiene, but Tony didn't even dare to swallow his saliva. Rogers saved people openly and honestly, so he naturally didn't understand why Tony changed his frivolousness in the past and looked very nervous. "I thought he was still feeling uncomfortable after waking up." Tony turned around and dodged his gaze. "Thank you, Steven." Natasha wanted to whistle for some reason. She turned her head to look at Link and shouted, "Tony is awake." Then she heard a muffled groan. After the Hulk and Ivan had a fist fight, neither could do anything to the other, and both pressed their hands against each other. But Hulk obviously lost, and two deep cracks were scratched under his feet, and he retreated little by little. Link could clearly see that the muscles on Hulk's back were trembling. Link would not miss this opportunity and jumped away. Holding the Guardian Greatsword upside down, he shook his body backwards and used his remaining strength to hit Ivan's head. No matter whether it was a god or a devil, as long as Link hit him in the head, it would still be a critical hit. The Guardian Greatsword exploded on Ivan's face, and countless light spots popped out. His head suddenly tilted back, and he lost his mind. The strength of his arms could not suppress Hulk all of a sudden. Hulk roared and pushed back. He pressed Ivan to the ground. Hawkeye quickly approached, put the deadly poison arrow on the bow, and shouted, "Leave it to me next." He climbed up directly on Hulk's shoulder, aimed at Ivan's eye, and shot an arrow. Bang! The arrow successfully pierced the eye and inserted into the eye socket. No matter how strong a creature is, the eye is one of the most vulnerable parts. Hawkeye held Hulk's head to keep his balance. Seeing Ivan screaming in pain, he snorted coldly, "The venom in here is enough to kill 100,000 strong men." But Ivan grinned and said, "Ha ha ha. It seems that it's still not good enough." He kicked Hulk in the abdomen. Hulk arched his back and flew out with Hawkeye. Ivan screamed and stood up and pulled out the arrow with two thick fingers. The bloody eye socket was about to be covered by the muscles that slowly extended over. "You can't destroy me." The remaining one eye stared at Link, who was half kneeling and panting and glaring at him. The electric whip lashed out. Natasha quickly emptied the bullets in her pistol and shot at Ivan. But the bullet hit Ivan's skin and bounced off like rubber without affecting Link's actions at all. Link was exhausted and rolled over to dodge the electric whip. But Ivan sneered, "You dug a hole for yourself." The electric whip lashed on the ground. The ground was full of Link's thin ice, which melted and splashed into small water, directly conducting electricity on Link. Link's body flashed with electricity, and he screamed, his body twitching close to the ground. Tony looked left and right, and shouted to Rogers, "Captain, go save Link, your shoes are rubber." Naturally, Tony didn't need to speak. Rogers ran over fearlessly with the shield in his hand. "Natasha!" Hawkeye shouted. He was pressed down by the unconscious Hulk. Hulk turned back into Banner, but such a heavy blow had broken Hawkeye's legs. Natasha ran towards Hawkeye. "Thanks for supporting this work. Welcome to Collect and Recommend. If you have any comments on the work, please leave a message in the book review area." Thank you to the book friend 2017031622-9227555 for the 100 starting coins. Thank you Wieland for the 100 starting coins. And everyone's recommendation votes. Thank you for recognizing my efforts. Chapter 91 The Hero Awakens, Zappo. The Hero Awakens, Zappo. Hawkeye pulled his injured leg out from under the unconscious Banner, panting. He pulled out an arrow that could be injected with poison. He handed it to Natasha, who came over and said, "You must have another tube of deadly potion." Natasha took out a small tube of colorless and tasteless potion from behind her and said with a smile, "Of course. The value of this tube of potion is enough for me to buy a new sports car." Hawkeye handed his beloved military bow to Natasha and said, "I can't walk now. I can only leave it to you. You must hit Ivan's other eye. Even if Ivan is strong, 2 tubes of potion are enough to poison him. It's all up to you." Natasha is versatile in all kinds of weapons. In terms of archery, even if she is not as good as Hawkeye and Link, she is far better than others. Among the available combat forces here, the strongest archer is Natasha. Natasha quickly injected the potion into the arrow, shook her hair, smiled and said, "Don't worry." Turning her head, she quickly and quietly approached. Hawkeye looked at Link twitching on the ground and thought to himself, "I hope that 2 tubes of potion can really poison Ivan. Otherwise." He lay exhausted on the wet ground. Rogers stepped on the water and rushed over desperately. At this moment, Ivan raised his other hand and threw down another electric whip, about to hit Link. Bang! Rogers held the shield, imitated Link's shield counter, leaped in front of Link, and tried his best to block it. Although the vibranium shield is made of metal, it can block the mighty power of Thor and has extremely high resistance. Ivan said HMM and looked at Rogers, who was ready. "The shield is good." Then he raised his hand again and whipped, and sparks of electricity lit up in the night sky. Rogers glanced at Link, who was twitching behind him. He had just blocked Ivan's whip and his knuckles were in great pain. But Rogers was not a calm person. He would not surrender obediently or retreat and abandon his injured teammates just because he could not beat the enemy with his hard power. So he roared again and went forward. Ivan whipped Rogers' shield with his electric whip. Rogers felt a white flash before his eyes and was shaken by the fierce electric light. Then the knuckles of his hands burst and bled. His body took 2 steps back and almost stepped on Link. Ivan sneered, "You are a respectable opponent, or ridiculous." Rogers took 2 steps forward and gritted his teeth and said, "I can fight you for 2 days and 2 nights. Ivan raised his hand and was ready to whip again. Natasha's hoarse voice came from behind. "Do you think you only have one opponent?" Natasha jumped up angrily, stepped on Ivan's rock-like back muscles, climbed on Ivan's neck, aimed at the eyeball troops, and thrust in with all her strength. She is better at daggers than bows and arrows. Hawkeye stared from afar, wondering, did it work? Ivan sneered disdainfully, do you think that one trick can hurt me twice in a row? Ivan closed one eye, and the poison arrow pierced his eyelid, just like piercing a piece of granite, unable to penetrate deeply, and even unable to pierce the skin. Natasha's face turned pale, and then Ivan pinched Natasha's hair with 2 fingers, and threw her out like a plastic bag. Natasha fell to the ground, and rolled a long way, curled up, and her body was seriously injured. The poison arrow fell into Ivan's palm. Ivan sneered and hit Rogers with a left hook, and Rogers flew out sideways with a shield. Ivan came to Link with 2 fingers, holding the poison arrow, staring at Link and sneered, when you threw the motorcycle at me, it hurt me a lot. Link gritted his teeth, and tried hard to move, but his body was severely shocked, and unable to move. He watched Ivan pierce him with the poison arrow. Tony shouted hopelessly, Link. Hawkeye also opened his eyes wide. Natasha pounded the ground with her fist, and gritted her teeth and said, damn it. Swish. The poison arrow successfully pierced into her body. Link opened his eyes wide. The whole audience was silent except for the crackling sound of electricity. Ivan sneered, it's really touching. Rogers, you are worthy of being a hero who died for the country. Link looked at Rogers' figure in shock, blocking him in front of him, not even bothering to take the shield, and ran over desperately, just to block the fatal blow for Link. Rogers panted violently, holding Ivan's wrists with both hands. His abdomen was bloody red, and the poison arrow was deeply inserted into Rogers' body cavity. His face was frighteningly pale, and his whole body was trembling. His will was tortured by unimaginable pain. Rogers' facial muscles were twisted, but his eyes were still very firm. He spoke word by word, gritting his teeth and said, Link, I will definitely defeat you. Humph. Are you talking about this little boy who was electrocuted so hard that he can't even speak? Ivan slapped Captain America away. Rogers lay on the side, his eyes gradually blurred. Tony shook his head, damn it. He had just woken up, and his whole body was weak. He moved desperately. He shouted, Ivan, your enemy is me. Let our 2 families not implicate others. Let Link go. If you have any problems, come to me. Come and kill me. Zelda walked back and forth in the secret passage, and suddenly her heart trembled. Pepper was also uneasy, lying on Zelda's shoulder listlessly. Ivan sneered, you all want to save Link, right? Then Ivan whipped him hard. Tony's eyes were red, and he roared, arsehole. Rogers collapsed on the ground, also looking at this scene hopelessly. Hawkeye turned his head away, while Natasha was cursing Ivan in Russian. He used all his strength to strike the electric whip. At this moment, everyone felt extremely desperate, and their hearts were empty, not knowing what to do. Link stared at Ivan, trembling and stretching out his arms, and grabbed the electric whip. HMM. Link groaned, and a stronger electric current penetrated his body. A layer of strong electric light on Link's body was like the glowing tungsten filament in a light bulb. When everyone thought that Link would not survive this second, Link endured the intense electric light and stood up. His eyes were like 2 torches. Tony, Natasha, Hawkeye, and the dying Rogers all stared at the thin, but angry and unyielding glowing figure. Ivan laughed and said, what a strong willpower. Really? He increased the current, and Link's body shook violently and almost fell down again. Ivan grinned and said, not dead yet? Let's see how long you can hold on. Come again. He increased the power, and the electric light injected into Link's body became stronger. Under the penetrating light, one could even see the internal organs and bones of Link's body. Complete the trial of the brave, the hero awakens. Zappo. Suddenly, a light blue flame emerged from Link's body, and gathered behind him to form a tall female shadow. A brown-skinned high-nosed red-haired woman hugged her arms and looked graceful. Ivan's eyes were filled with surprise. The others didn't understand what was happening yet. The female shadow behind him was none other than the Gerudo Queen, and one of the 4 heroes, Zappo. Long time no see, Link, how is the little princess? What kind of enemy is in front of you? Zappo looked at Ivan, raised his eyebrows, stretched out his hand, and snapped his fingers. Click. Mitha will also appear soon. I'm confused. I'm very satisfied with my recent chapters. Why is the response so mediocre? What do you think? Please express your opinions. Thank you for the support of Lily Shooping with 100 Kidian coins. Thank you for the support of Zuayuka with 100 Kidian coins. Thank you to all the book friends for the generous recommendation votes. Thank you very much. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 92 The Power of Thunder. Tony was surprised to see Link's body full of lightning. His long, bright blonde hair stood up in a silvery white color under the lightning. Behind him, a tall figure stretched out his slender arms, pinched his thumb and middle finger, and made a crisp sound. But in the ears of everyone present, the sound of the follower snapping his fingers was instantly followed by the sound of thunder that destroyed the world, and everyone couldn't help but lower their heads. In the night sky, dark clouds gathered quickly, forming a vortex-like cone, and the lightning in the clouds rose and fell like breathing. Bang! A huge thunder struck down, like a great sword, that penetrated the sky and the earth, angrily stabbing into the human world from the endless sky, aiming at Ivan's head and slamming it down. Who? A flash of lightning. Everyone's eyes turned white due to the dazzling lightning, and they couldn't see anything clearly. When their vision recovered, Ivan's huge body was already covered with lightning and was fiercely knocked away. At the place where Ivan stood, the asphalt and soil collapsed, and a large pit was blown out by the lightning. The broken pipe inside was exposed, and dirty water was oozing out. Tony wanted to use Jarvis to analyze the power Link had just used, but Iron Man had been split in half. But according to Tony's own estimation, even with the most conservative calculation method, the power of thunder from Link's attack was enough to fill the energy needed for his 3 Iron Man suits. Such terrible power could not be explained by the flesh or internal strength or martial arts. It can only be explained that this was the power from God. Tony and Link were so familiar with each other, but at this moment, he felt a little strange about the thin boy who kept panting beside the big pit created by lightning. As Appo said, "Thank you, Link, for waking me up again. Although it's quite comfortable to sleep in the void forever, it would be great if I could see this world again. Is this not the Hyrule continent?" Link's eyes revealed fatigue, and he explained, "This is not Hyrule. Ganon escaped to this world and tried to revive the princess and I chased him." As Appo's face was a little gloomy. "Ganon? That guy is really hard to deal with." Link saw Rogers lying on the ground and panting heavily, and hurried over. Link blamed himself and said, "I'm sorry. I got you into trouble." Rogers smiled weakly, "But you didn't let me down. You defeated Ivan, didn't you?" Tony also staggered over with a complicated expression. Rogers had just saved him, but now he was on the verge of death. Tony sat dejectedly beside Rogers and said nothing. Natasha also covered her shoulder and walked over. Link asked Natasha, "Is there an antidote for this poison?" Natasha shook her head, her face very sad. "No. This is an unsolvable poison. Captain, do you have any last words? Tell me." When everyone was silent in sorrow, Link's face was so gloomy that it seemed like ink could drip out. In the original time and space, Captain America could live until Thanos wiped out half of the population of the universe. But now because of him, he died early at the hands of Ivan, a small villain in Iron Man 2. This made Link very angry, sad, and puzzled. It was unclear why little Ivan could get the blood of the Hulk and become so strong. At this time, Rogers laughed in confusion. "What are you talking about? Except for a hole in my stomach, I'm very healthy. I don't feel like dying at all." "Huh?" Tony shouted out, looking unbelievable. Looking at Natasha, "Are your poison arrows counterfeit and inferior products?" Natasha shook her head. "No mistake. That kind of poison, only 1 milligram is enough to kill 100,000 strong men in 1 second. It is still in the experimental stage, and there is no antidote for the symptoms." Roger spread his hands and smiled. "Don't you know? My physique is not afraid of toxins." Everyone was confused. If Agent Coulson, a die-hard fan of Captain America, was present, he would definitely explain it to everyone calmly. Super Soldier Serum helps Captain America's white blood cells change, which can be immune to the effects of toxins, bacteria, diseases, and even alcohol. Captain America has not been drunk for 70 years. In the most painful few days, because of the great changes in the times, Rogers tried to quit drinking to relieve his sorrow, but the pressure in his heart did not ease, but the pressure on his bladder appeared, and he finally ran to the bathroom frequently. Captain America is fine. It was a false alarm. Zappo said, "Where's the little princess? I can feel her breath." Unlike Darkle, who directly applied his power to Link's body, Zappo's power was infused into lightning, so it could last longer. Among the 4 heroes, the one who had the best relationship with Zelda was Zappo, the Queen of Gerudo. After her death, she became a heroic spirit, and she was obsessed with Zelda. The two of them could really be called bosom friends. Link said, "Borrow your power." He pointed his finger at the secret passage, covered by the coach, click, and snapped his fingers crisply. Before the sound of the snap disappeared, a thin layer of lightning suddenly appeared on the coach, and then shadows gathered in the sky, and a lightning click struck down, splitting the coach abruptly. From between the two halves of the coach, Nick, who was stunned, stood there stupidly. Obviously, he didn't know what the lightning was about. He was so scared that his heart trembled. On the side of the bus, 2 little heads popped out. One was Pepper and the other was Zelda. Zelda looked around curiously. "Did we win?" Her eyes quickly caught sight of Zappo in the spirit state. Her eyes froze, and then tears flowed from her eyes, and she ran over desperately. Zappo. Zappo also opened his arms, wanting to hug this lovely little princess. But the two figures crossed, and Zelda passed through Zappo, missed, and was supported by Link. Zappo shook his head regretfully, but then turned around and whispered handsomely, "You're in good spirits, my little princess." At this moment, a roar came from the distance. Then there were heavy footsteps one after another, and a monster with electric light all over its body, burning and festering, and rotten flesh squirming, walked over with heavy steps, and the footsteps seemed to step on everyone's hearts. Zappo took a deep breath. What a strong enemy. I just hit him so hard, but I still couldn't kill him. I feel that he is still getting stronger. Natasha rubbed her shoulders in distress. I don't have any more poison. At this moment, there was only 0.5 fighting force on the field, and that was the exhausted Link. His body had been shocked by electricity for a long time, and he had been fighting continuously, so his body had long been overdrawn. Ivan roared, "I will not lose." Suddenly, his face smiled hideously, and his eyes emitted a strange red light. Seeing Ivan's eyes, Zelda, Link, and Zappo were shocked. They felt the strong power of Ganon pollution. Welcome to join the fan group. To find the author. To urge for updates 783 56 37 33 exclamation point. There is still one chapter before 12 o'clock. The plot will connect to Thor, and the character you have been waiting for will also appear in a few chapters. Thank you for your support. Thank you Minecraft to 500 starting coins for awarding support. Thanks to the book friend 16,102,409,408,881 for the 100 Kidian coins reward. Thanks to all the book friends for their generous recommendation votes. Thank you very much. Chapter 93 You protect the world, I protect you. Zelda and the other two all had a grudge against Ganon, and were most sensitive to Ganon's aura. Although Ivan only exposed a little bit, it made the three of them feel like they were falling into an ice cave. Link took 2 steps forward, picked up Roger's vibranium shield, took out a guard one-handed sword from the weapon space, and walked over. Zappo followed behind Link. Although he was in a very bad state and was exhausted, everyone was now exhausted, and Link had to do it. Moreover, Ganon polluted the Marvel World line, causing a weak boss in Iron Man 2 to become so powerful. Now Link is not facing Ivan, but the Ganon power behind Ivan. Since it is Ganon, Link must go out in person. Link. Link. Ivan whispered Link's name. His voice was distorted. A violent aura spread all over his body, as if this guy with strong and bloated muscles was no longer a human, but some kind of ancient murderer. Ivan rushed over at an incredibly fast speed, and waved his hand to use an electric whip. Link held the vibranium shield and bounced back. The electric whip collided with the shield, and the lightning hit the vibranium, causing a wave of microwaves on the surface. Link found the power center of this attack and adjusted the shield with his arms, with his mind focused. At the moment of contact with the lightning and the whip, Link has been capturing all the details of this attack. Adjust the strength and use your wrist to force. Click. The shield counter was successful. The electric whip rebounded to Ivan. The lightning covered Ivan's body in a large area, and Ivan took 3 steps back. Link was about to reach out and give Ivan another fierce electric shock, but at this moment, a wave of lightning suddenly appeared under his feet. Link had been ambushed by the destroyer who dug up from the ground before, so he had experience and jumped away in a hurry. The asphalt broke apart, and a man climbed up with dirt and stones all over his head. He was as thin as a stick, with deep eyes, like a skeleton. The clothes on his body were obviously too big, stained with dirt, and filthy. The clothes on his chest were bloody and torn. You can see that his chest had been operated on, cut open, and then sutured in an extremely sloppy way. The dirty and hideous chest looked very disgusting. Tony was shocked. Hammer? After not seeing him for a few days, Hammer seemed to have been tortured greatly and was extremely skinny. Hammer laughed wildly. Tony. Link. Tony. He attacked Link with a claw, and Link dodged, wanting to kick Hammer away. He moved over and kicked Hammer in the chest. However, something unexpected happened. Even if Link was exhausted now, a kick would not be something that ordinary people could withstand. And Hammer had a weird and twisted smile on his face. His skinny and cracked chest suddenly opened and wrapped Link's foot into his inner cavity. Roger shouted, "It seems that Hammer has also been transformed into a monster by Ivan." Then something flew over from afar. Boom boom boom. Several shells were fired continuously, bombarding Link. Tony shouted, "Rode?" Link hurriedly took the shield and used a series of shields to counter, hitting the shells back at War Machine one by one. Tony hurriedly asked Saya to borrow the control glasses and used Jarvis to shout into War Machine, "Rode?" War Machine swayed left and right in the air to dodge the shells, and Rode inside was helpless. Tony, I can't control War Machine anymore. Hammer used his body as a chain to lock Link, and like a mad dog, he opened his mouth to ask for Link's thigh, and Ivan, who was standing aside, had stood up again and punched him. Link snapped his fingers in a hurry. Click. With Link as the center, the electric current was quickly dispersed. Hammer and Ivan were shocked. Link jumped up on one foot and stomped on Hammer's face with his free foot, using the force to break free from the foot bound in Hammer's body. Then he landed and rolled to dodge. Link used the power of thunder twice more. At this moment, he was dizzy and could faint at any time. As Abo said, "Link, your body is overdrawn too much." Link now had to face the joint attack of Ivan and Hammer. He tried his best to dodge and block with his shield. Tony saw it and thought, "Hold on. Give me 10 seconds. Tony quickly cracked the War Machine. The War Machine controlled by Ivan also joined the battle to attack Link. Link was hit by a shell, but fortunately he had a vibranium shield to block it, and was not seriously injured. The barrel of the War Machine once again aimed at Link, who fell to the ground and vomited blood. But at this time, Tony cracked the War Machine. Tony shouted, "Okay, Roddy, I'll help you restore your permissions. Kill these 2 bastards. Quick." Roddy shouted, "Great." He turned the gun around and fired 2 shots at Ivan and Hammer beside him. Bang, bang. In the firelight, Hammer rushed out and entangled War Machine frantically, digging War Machine's helmet with his fingers. The 2 fell to the ground and wrestled, and Ivan's eyes gradually turned red, just staring at Link, and rushed over quickly. Zelda shouted, "Flying bird." The flying bird quickly unfolded and glided away, attacked Ivan. But Ivan dodged the light attack, pinched the flying bird with both hands, and shouted "Rip." Tear the flying bird apart. Zelda's face was pale. No one came to rescue Link at this moment. As Appo shouted, "Link, this guy's power is increasing at a rapid rate." Ivan, with his larger body than before, roared, "That's right, Link. I'm getting stronger, and you're getting weaker. Now I'm 15 times stronger than before." A punch came, as if it shattered the air. Everyone present felt their breath stagnate. Desperate thoughts occurred in everyone's mind, except Link. Link took out his long sword and held it with both hands. Although his knees had already begun to tremble, waves of emptiness and fatigue also tortured his nerves. but he was still fearless. Zappo, lend me strength. No. If you continue like this, you will die. Run away. Zappo shouted hurriedly. Run away. Let Ivan continue to grow bigger and stronger like this? Link roared. Listen to me. Lend me strength. I won't die. I know that there is a fish girl who will appear in my most dangerous moment and save me. So I'm fearless. The power of thunder and lightning poured into the long sword from his arms. Link felt that his body had collapsed and only half of his blood was left. He stabbed with his sword without hesitation. Zappo turned his head away, not daring to look. The others were stunned, looking at Link who was fighting for his life. Zelda clasped her hands and prayed, please. Goddess Hylia. Father. Liber. Mipha. Please save Link. Link dodged Ivan's fist and stabbed the sword deep into Ivan's chest. The lightning disappeared for a moment, and Zappo also shook his head, looking at Zelda with disappointment, smiling bitterly, and disappeared. Link lowered his head, and his body remained motionless in the posture of stabbing the sword. Although Ivan was stabbed in the chest, the dark blood flowed out, staining Link's hands and sword. But Ivan was still laughing wildly. Link. Link. You are finally dead. Tony knelt on the ground dejectedly. Natasha closed her eyes. Rogers gritted his teeth and pulled out the poison arrow from his abdomen. Blood gushed out. He tried hard to stand up and continue to fight Ivan to the death. Hawkeye moved his body, gritted his teeth, and crawled over with a bow and arrow in his hand. Nick lowered his head and rubbed his eyes. The other agents looked at Link and Ivan blankly. Peppa was more direct and cried loudly. And Zelda heard a broken voice in her heart, but she was still praying silently. Ivan's eyes were stained with dirty crimson, and when he was about to raise his head and roar, a bright light blue light emerged from his chest. A tender call spread throughout New York. I will protect you, Link. And in Link's dead heart, the murmur of the goddess Hylia also sounded. Complete the trial of the brave. The hero awakens. Mipha. The word count has exceeded the limit. I wanted to cut off a paragraph and post it in the next chapter, but I was afraid that you would send razor blades, so I posted it all. Thank you for your support. Thank you book friend Lily Aquarius for supporting 100 starting coins. Welcome to join the Attic Night Talk Book Fan Exchange Group chat number 783,563,733. Chapter 94 The Battle Between Black and White. Actually, after Link awakened the soul of the Gerudo Queen Zappo, he already knew how to awaken Mipha. The Drum Tribe hero, Darkle, gave Link strength and a 100% successful shield counter ability. It came from a head-on confrontation with the Hulk. The Gerudo hero, Zappo, gave Link the power of thunder. It came from the high-intensity electric shock of Ganon's demonized Ivan. Then, the Fishman hero, Princess Zora Mipha, who is good at healing and resurrecting Link. In order to awaken Mipha, Link must first die once, and only at the cost of death can he awaken Mipha, the most important hero in Link's heart. This is undoubtedly the most dangerous trial. Zelda opened her mouth slightly and looked at the red figure floating above Link with wide eyes. Peppa stopped crying and looked at Mipha foolishly, but suddenly lost his balance and fell to the ground. Tony, Rogers and others were all surprised. Just now, I witnessed the tragic news that Link died of exhaustion. At this moment, Link's body released blue flames again and condensed into a brand new human form. Things happened too fast, and they didn't have time to digest their emotions. Tony heard Zelda say something. This red soul is Link's childhood sweetheart, the fishman Mipha? Zelda rubbed her wet eyes and smiled. Yes, it's Mipha. When she appears, Link is safe. Mipha's eyes were as soft and clear as a stream in the morning. She looked down at Link and whispered, Link. Long time no see, wake up. Ivan would not stand there stupidly, watching Link complete a whole series of changes. He roared and attacked again with a punch. The dark red dirty light like lightning was wrapped around his fist. This was the curse power from Ganon. A fist hit Link's chest firmly. Bang! The asphalt road under his feet broke instantly. Under the huge force, it was affected and a big pit was blown out. Zelda, Tony and the others were blown away by the wave that came from far away. The windows of the tall buildings in the distance were blown into pieces of glass and scattered down. Tony hit his head hard on the ground, gritted his teeth, shook off the dirt and sat up, and saw that in front of him, a large pit similar to a meteorite crater had been blown out by Ivan's punch. Tony's face turned pale, and he hurriedly climbed to the edge of the meteorite crater to look for Link's trace. Ivan's face was hideous, and Link opened his eyes with a pair of clear blue pupils, looking directly at Ivan. Ivan's fist stopped its momentum 1 meter in front of Link and was wrapped by a large palm. In front of Link was a 3-meter giant with light blue flames all over his body, and his body was earthy yellow, seemingly made of rock. His 2 very cute black bean eyes were staring at the monster in front of him majestically. "Your fist is really powerful." Ivan screamed out the name of the giant. Darker. Darker stared at Ivan and said angrily, "It's you. I recognized your voice, Demon King Ganon." With a loud shout, he punched Ivan in the abdomen. The huge force pulled Darker's body, and it was slightly deformed. Boom. Ivan flew into the sky. The blue flame on Link's body was strong again, and a tall and handsome red-haired woman walked out behind him. Zabo smiled and said, "It seems that except for Libel, the heroes have reunited." He pointed at the demonized Ivan in the sky and snapped his fingers. Tap. The sky was densely covered with dark clouds, and the thunder struck down like the axe of the god of war, piercing through the world. Thor in Asgard felt his body shaken, and some kind of power similar to that of the god of thunder made Thor feel like he was facing a great enemy. This made him, who was being crowned the king of Asgard, look a little heavy. Odin also looked at the horizon in confusion and pondered, what happened on Earth? On Earth, the power of thunder hit the demonized Ivan heavily. Ivan's huge body quickly charred and turned black at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a blink of an eye, it turned into a charred black object that looked like charcoal and fell. Miffa was worried. "Did you defeat him?" Darkle did not relax and shook his head. Zabo's face was not good either. Rogers was supported by Natasha, and the two watched nervously. Ivan, who was beaten by thunder and lightning and had lost his human form, suddenly had his charred limbs cracked, and a mass of strange things crawled out, like flowing magma, and on the magma, there were eyes of different sizes, all staring at Link, with dry expressions, revealing a pure malice. Zelda exclaimed, "It's Ganon pollution." Tony felt sick. Ivan before was at least in human form, but now he was an indescribable monster. Is this the guy hiding in Ivan's body? Miffa looked at Link, with a glimmer in her eyes, and put her little hand on Link's shoulder. "Link. From now on, I can only rely on you." Zappo also smiled and said, "That's right. Mr. Brave, although you are very tired, this guy can only be defeated by you." Darkle slapped his chest fiercely. "My power. Brother Link, just you sit." Nick, with a head full of dirt, also jumped and shouted beside him, "Kill Ivan. Link, go ahead. Kill this guy." Now everyone's eyes were focused on Link. Link walked forward with his sword. Miffa smiled and disappeared. Zappo disappeared. Darkle disappeared. And the light blue flame on Link's body became more vigorous, as if Link was really burning. Ivan. No, this monster was living in Ivan's body, and finally exposed the front of the Ganon pollution, and shouted sharply, "Link." The Ganon pollution suddenly splashed with black light, exuding an extremely dangerous breath, and the power was completely restrained. Even the light could not be refracted. It was full of malice and darkness in the wild, and it rushed towards Link like a venomous snake. "Ganon, die." Darkle shouted loudly in Link's body, and then the lightning spread from his chest to his whole body, and finally gathered on the one-handed sword in his hand. The power of the two heroes was added to Link's body at the same time. He only felt that the heavy pressure made his body close to collapse again. His shoulders sank, and his vision was blurred and turbulent. But then, Miffa's gentle voice came. "I will help you share the pressure." Under Miffa's protective power, Link returned to normal. With a loud shout, he stretched out his arm, carrying the soul power of the three heroes, and the sword head met the attacking Ganon pollution black light. Swish! The lightning and black light collided with each other. One piece of white, one piece of black, but only a muffled and subtle sound of mutual corrosion was heard. At the center of the collision between the two, the intersection of black and white, the space began to distort, and a vortex spread out. Then Ganon pollution and Link's figure, like a reflection on the lake, rippled. Swish! The space suddenly broke, sucking the two into the crack, and the two suddenly disappeared. 9 realms, the home of the frost giants, Jotunheim. Time and space broke, and a blonde boy suddenly fell from the sky. Thank you for watching. The story of Thor begins. Thank you for the support of Lily Water Bottles 100 starting coins. Thank you for the support of Minecrafters 100 starting coins. Thank you for the generous recommendation votes from all readers. Thank you for your love. Chapter 95. Time and space are broken. Link and Ganon pollution were trapped in the turbulence of time and space. Even though the two of them were extremely powerful on Earth, enough to destroy a small country, they were still extremely fragile under the destruction of the order of heaven and earth. Ganon pollution was shattered into pieces by the fragmented space power in just a few seconds, and his body completely collapsed in this eternal vortex. He was also attacked fiercely, using the vibranium shield and frequently using shield counters to fight back the space-time fragments that were coming. But under the airtight sandstorm-like attack, Link could only lose. Under the attack of high-pressure space fragments, Link directly summoned Dark Lord and launched a full-range shield counter without dead ends. The surrounding space was instantly cleared, and Link had not had time to breathe. Besides, there was no air supply to Link in the space turbulence. Countless space fragments, like the fragments splashed down by the explosion of the building glass just now, hit Link again. In a critical situation, Link used the new skill he had acquired not long ago, Time Stop. This time, he did not use the Time Stop skill to stop other things, but himself. Crack. Link's side suddenly stopped, a white flash, and several illusory chains bound his body. Now Link is imprisoned by solidified time. The fragments of time and space turbulence that hit from the outside world cannot hurt a person who is solidified in time. This provides Link with precious 3 seconds. 3 seconds later, the alien in this time and space turbulence was attracted by a thin layer of space cracks. Snap. The chains on Link's body burst, and he woke up instantly. He saw himself in the high cold wind in the sky, continuing to chase down. Am I being carried to the North Pole by the time and space turbulence? Link descended quickly, and his body suddenly formed a layer of frost. The temperature of this nameless place is at least -40 degrees. Link's lips were immediately frozen purple. He hurriedly used the Ice Maker, the ability to control ice. Acting on himself, his body immediately recovered from the freezing cold. With the help of the Ice Maker, Link is not afraid of the cold. When he was about to fall to the ground, blue flames appeared on Link's body, and a small red fish girl broke free and shouted, "Link." Link was very curious. "I didn't summon you?" Mipha was a little shy. "My relationship with you is different from that of others. You. Be careful. Mipha is very special among the 4 heroes. She does not need Link's active summoning. When Link is in danger, she will automatically appear." When Link saw Mipha, his heart was warmed. This gentle fish princess who entered the water has never changed from the first time he saw her to the time when only the souls met 100 years later. She has always been like this, looking at him quietly. When Link woke up, after sleeping for 100 years, the first memory he woke up was also about this gentle fish girl. Link smiled and said, "Don't worry about me." As he was about to fall to the ground, Link suddenly raised one hand, and a bridge made of ice appeared under his body, with a steep slope at the top and a gentle slope at the bottom. Link fell on the slope of the ice bridge, without much impact, and then he sat on the ice bridge, and slid to the ground leisurely. "You have to believe in my skills." Link tried to grab Mipha floating in the air, and Mipha also timidly stretched out his hand. Both of them were afraid, and their hands were crossed. Living people cannot touch souls. Just like a Zabo cannot hug Zelda. But, Link felt a cold touch, and he really held Mipha's red little hand. Mipha looked at Link a little stupidly, and suddenly shouted, "Be careful." It turned out that Link only paid attention to Mipha, and forgot that he was about to slide to the land, and he didn't have time to defend himself. His body was thrown out suddenly. This was the force of rushing down from a high altitude. Link rolled on the ground for a long distance. Link rubbed his head and sat up, and a piece of skin was broken on his forehead. Mipha chuckled and said, "You still love adventure. Just like when we were little." Mipha floated over. 2 red little hands rested on Link's head, releasing the power of heroes, and the scratch on Link's forehead healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. "We are just like before. You are injured. Come to me for treatment." "You." Link looked at Mipha in confusion. He didn't know why Mipha was hesitant to speak. Mipha turned her head away a little shyly. "You didn't peek at my diary?" Link laughed dryly and scratched his temples with his fingers. He is such a curious person. How could he not peek at Mipha's diary? "You." Mipha blushed. Link's reaction had already explained everything, making Mipha very shy, embarrassed to face this sweetheart who had peeked at her in her records. But Mipha paused, still firmed her will, and said with a little trembling voice, "My feelings for you have never changed from beginning to end. I will always protect you." Link said nothing, and took Mipha into his arms. He is not good at speaking, nor is he good at expressing his inner feelings. This hug is his attitude. Just as the two who met after a long separation were silently hugging each other. "Hi." The two in front. A loud shout startled Mipha, hiding in Link's arms, and not wanting to go out and hug Link. If others, especially Zelda, found out, Mipha whispered in Link's arms, "Who's coming?" Link turned his head and glared at the noisy guy, and then his eyes showed a strange expression. Link stood up. The person who came was a warrior wearing a red cloak and armor, with long hair and beard, tall and strong, and a pair of blue eyes staring at Link and Mipha. Behind him followed 5 warriors dressed in the same style. One of them had cunning eyes and a faint smile on his lips. He was not sure what bad idea he was thinking. He was handsome, but his hairline was as regrettable as Carlson's. Link shouted, "Thor? Loki?" The visitors were none other than the Thor brothers and their comrades who had come all the way to Jotunheim to cause trouble for the frost giants. Thor was not surprised at all that Link called out his and his brothers' names. He was the son of Odin and the Prince of Asgard, and everyone in the universe should have known them. "Two human ladies. What are you doing in the lair of the frost giants?" Thor's tone was very rough, but his words were unexpectedly polite, quite ancient. Loki smiled wickedly, not knowing what was going on. He had discovered something, but had not told his brother. Not to mention why the northern god could speak modern English with a standard accent. Thor had only said 2 sentences to annoy Link. Link immediately retorted, "Who is that old lady with long hair and blue eyes talking about?" Thor's face changed. 2 men who hate being treated as girls are about to fight. For the sake of these 2 tough guys, please give them some recommendation votes. Thank you for Lily Shooping's 100 Kidian coins reward. Thank you for ZUIUK's 100 Kidian coins reward support. And all the book friends for their generous recommendation votes. Thank you for your kindness. Welcome to join group 783,563,733 and ask the author to update. Chapter 96, The Frost Giant's Way of Speaking. Ever since Link started wearing women's clothes, he would get angry whenever this topic was mentioned. "You, Thor, the god of thunder, swing your hammer to hit others when they mock you as a princess. You are upset that people treat you like a girl, and you don't know how to put yourself in their shoes." Link choked him. Thor immediately got angry and shouted, "How dare you humiliate me, Thor, the son of Odin." He raised his hammer and was about to hit Link hard. Sif behind him hurriedly grabbed Thor and shouted, "Why are you arguing with a little girl? Bullying the weak is not what a warrior does." Thor whispered to Sif, "I won't hit her with my hammer, I'll just run up to scare her and make her learn some sense." Loki also smiled maliciously and said, "Let my brother go. Something interesting will happen." Loki was best at observing people's expressions, so he could naturally see the extraordinariness of Link and the round shield in Link's hand. He wanted to see his brother make a fool of himself. Thor walked over with a swagger. He gestured with the hammer in front of Link and said, "I tell you, mocking a warrior for being a woman is the greatest insult. I don't want to hurt the weak, so I advise you to apologize to me." Before he could even say the word apology, Link punched Thor in the abdomen. Thor's face instantly turned the same level of green as Hulk's. Holding his breath, he hurriedly stepped back a few steps. His mouth grew into a zero shape, and he couldn't breathe for a long time. Thor's comrades hurried up to check. The Asian-looking Hogan pointed his 2 swords at Link. "Go ahead and hurt Thor." Thor hurriedly grabbed Hogan, barely stood up, and pretended to be indifferent with a stiff face. "Humph, worry too much. Her little fist is too weak, and it tickled me." In fact, he was in doubt. How could this guy have such strong arm strength in his small body? The lost Valkyrie? The little girl has a bad temper. Link pointed at his Adam's apple. I'm a man. Thor and his group were shocked. Asgard advocates bravery and everyone is a real man. The most feminine one is Loki. They have never seen such a delicate and cute boy. Thor's face changed and pointed the hammer at Link. In that case, let's have a contest between men. Tell me your name. Come and fight. After swinging the hammer and spinning, the hammer took Thor and rushed towards Link. Loki shook his head in confusion, raised his eyebrows, and folded his arms to look at Thor's comrades. We seem to be here to cause trouble for the frost giants. Are we getting off topic now? Thor didn't think so much. Fighting the frost giants is fighting, and fighting Link is also fighting. It doesn't matter which order. Link stepped forward and said to Mipha, "Watch me." Link and Mipha are childhood sweethearts. As a playmate who witnessed the most naughty moments of childhood, Link is far less serious in front of Mipha than he is with Zelda. He shook the vibranium shield in his hand and thought to himself, "Rogers, I'm sorry, it's not my fault for the sudden situation. Just lend me the shield for fun." Link lowered his knees, got into position, and looked for the right moment. Tap. He fired a shield counterattack. Thor's hammer turned around and hit Thor's face hard. Thor groaned and flew backwards, and Mjolnir landed in front of Link. He was caught by his comrade, his eyes were full of stars, and there was a rectangular red mark on his face, like a stamp. Thor often stamped others, but he didn't expect that one day he would stamp himself with a red mark. Loki looked at Link in doubt. He saw that Link was extraordinary at a glance, but he didn't expect that he still underestimated Link. This counterattack injured Thor, which caught him off guard. Loki stepped forward and shouted, "Who are you?" "My name is Link." "What a Link?" Thor rubbed his face and looked at Link with anger. Thor is over 1,000 years old. He has experienced countless battles, strong men, duels, and hardships, and has created a great reputation. Who in Asgard does not believe in him? At this moment, he is suppressed by a young human who appears in Jotunheim for some reason. The shield is good. The rebound is also very exquisite. Then I will add 10 times the strength. Thor stretched out his hand to summon back Thor's hammer. Link stepped on the hammer first to prevent the hammer from returning to Thor's hand. Thor snorted. "Do you think you can prevent the hammer from returning to my hand? Do you think, Since this is Thor's challenge to Link, in order to respect Thor, Loki, Sif, Hagen, Fandral, and Volstagg can only watch from the sidelines. They also have great trust in Thor's bravery. At this moment, they saw an amazing scene. Thor's hammer, which has always obeyed Thor, struggled violently under Link's feet, but could not get rid of it. This is the first time I have seen it. This is Thor's hammer Mjolnir, a divine weapon with a soul. It symbolizes thunder and lightning and violent divine power. But at this moment, it was stepped on by Link and could not be retrieved. Link reached out to pick up Thor's hammer. Fandral sneered, "Don't dream. Only Thor and Odin, the Lord of Asgard, can lift Thor's hammer." Link smiled and said, "Really?" He held the handle of the hammer in his palm and lifted it up easily, nodding. "The weight is very handy. Not bad." The people of Asgard took a breath and couldn't believe their eyes. Thor's hammer Mjolnir was easily picked up by a weak blonde boy, and Thor looked like he saw his fiancée eloped with Loki. He murmured, "This is impossible. Only a brave man with a pure heart can pick up Thor's hammer." The look in his eyes when he looked at Link changed again and again. Since he could pick up Thor's hammer, it is enough to show that this boy named Link is a respectable warrior. At this moment, a cold voice came, "Son of Odin, what do you want with me?" Countless frost giants surrounded him. The leader of the frost giants, King Laufey, noticed Thor the moment he set foot in Jotunheim. He had been waiting in his lair, but no one came. He was puzzled and simply went out to look for him. From a distance, he saw Thor holding Mjolnir and confronting a group of Asgardian warriors. He wondered, are they fighting among themselves? Forget it, never mind, just kill them all. King Laufey had never seen Thor before, and he recognized the hammer, but not the person, and mistook Link for Thor. He came over after breaking through the ice, and was stunned when he saw Link. He whispered, "Thor, son of Odin? I didn't expect you to look so like a little girl." Thor noticed the frost giants approaching him, and after hearing what Laufey said, He was furious. "You're looking for death. How dare you mock me? Laufey, who are you?" Thor, the god of thunder. Laufey pointed at Link. "Why is Mjolnir in this man's hands?" Thor, "He stole my hammer." Laufey realized that he had recognized the wrong person and sneered sullenly. "Haha. Odin actually gave birth to such a loser, and his hammer was snatched away by a little girl. He offended two people with one sentence. Thank you Minecrafter for your 100 starting coins. Thank you ZUIUK for your 100 starting coins. Thank you bookfriend201811040056155174 for your 100 starting coins. Thank you all for your recommendation votes. Thank you all for recognizing this work. Chapter 97 Freeze everything. Link said angrily, "Who are you calling a little girl?" Thor said angrily, "Who are you calling a wimp?" The two looked at each other. Ever since Thor saw Link pick up Thor's hammer, his attitude towards Link has changed a lot. No matter what, someone who can be recognized by Mjolnir can't be a bad person. Being recognized by his own artifact, Link deserves Thor's respect. Not only Thor, but other Asgardian warriors, when they saw Link pick up Thor's hammer, they couldn't help but bow and express their awe. Thor said, "Link, you are a respectable and good warrior. It is not appropriate to fight with you now. Defeat these frost giants, and then we can drink and chat happily. This is a fight between Asgard and Jotunheim, and it is not appropriate to involve outsiders. Give me back my hammer." Link smiled and said, "You have a grudge against this ice lump, and so do I. Lend me your hammer first. It's really good. I like it." Link has been eyeing Thor's hammer for a long time. Although he doesn't like to take other people's things, since he has the opportunity, Link still wants to play with it for a while. Loki came to Thor and said to his brother, "There are too many enemies." Link already held the vibranium shield in his left hand, picked up Thor's hammer in his right hand, and rushed forward quickly. At an extremely fast speed, carrying a cold wind, the hammer swung down like the creation of the world and smashed it towards King Laufey's face. Suddenly, a strong electric light appeared on Mjolnir, and arcs of electricity raged in the air, emitting a dazzling brilliance. Thor saw the lightning on Thor's hammer, and his face turned green again. Lightning? This kid can use Thor's hammer and release lightning. Is he trying to steal my title of Thor? The other Asgardian warriors were also confused, and even thought that Link was Odin's illegitimate son. Otherwise, how could he pick up Mjolnir and release lightning? Thor came to his senses. He naturally didn't want to lose to Link in bravery, and immediately shouted, "Warriors, go." Upon hearing the battle, the eyes of several Asgardian warriors instantly burned, sparks splashed, and they picked up their weapons and rushed towards the enemy closest to them. Loki shook his head and joined the battle. On the field, one person suddenly felt very embarrassed. This person was Thor, the god of thunder who announced the war. Because Link had taken away his hammer, Thor was left with empty hands, feeling very embarrassed. A frost giant roared and attacked, exuding a biting icy breath, causing a layer of white frost to condense on Thor's beard. Thor clenched his fists, and his embarrassment turned into anger. He shouted loudly, "Take my Thor's fist." The volleyball-sized fist smashed hard at the intruder. When the frost giant leader Laufey saw Link rushing with a red soul, the Thor's hammer in his hand released terrible electricity, which reminded him of the cruel experience of the battle with Odin. At this time, Link was calm and even looked a little happy, because he had obtained a handy weapon, which reminded Laufey of Odin in his heyday. Although Link was far less powerful than Odin in his prime in terms of strength and prestige, it was enough to make Laufey's heart tremble and feel disgust from the bottom of his heart. Laufey shouted, "You're still saying you're not Thor?" He punched forward, and a sharp ice giant sword quickly emerged from his fingers. Its coldness was enough to freeze Lake Bakel. A layer of frost suddenly appeared on the front of Link's body. Although it had not yet touched the ice giant sword, the cold wind that gushed out made Link's blood seem to coagulate. Seeing Link's face change, and his lips turn purple, Laufey immediately felt disdainful. "That's all. How can a little boy like you resist the cold poison of my frost giant?" Other frost giants must touch the other's flesh with their hands to absorb the cold poison into the other's body. As the strongest in Jotunheim, Laufey's ability to use cold poison is beyond imagination, and he can attack the enemy from a distance. Laufey poured strength into the ice giant sword with both arms and stabbed it suddenly. Now Link was attacked by the cold poison and could not protect himself. How could he deal with Laufey's heavy sword? But the situation was beyond Laufey's expectations. Link shouted, and the lightning on Thor's hammer became brighter, like a small comet, hitting the ice giant sword and destroying it, exploding into countless ice fragments. Laufey quickly stepped back 3 steps, and Link poured powerful thunder power into his body, making his body numb. Laufey's body shook, and the thunder power in his body was instantly dispersed. This thunder power is not as good as Odin's back then, so it can't really hurt Laufey. But it was enough to shock him. You can actually use such a strong force under my cold poison. Link landed, his body shook, and his hands were cracked because of the attack with Laufey. Mipha, in the soul state, hugged Link's body and used his own heroic power to repair Link's muscle rupture and the cold poison damage in his body. After all, Laufey was a strong man from the 9 realms who fought against Odin that year. Link, who had just experienced a fierce battle with the cursed power of Ivan Ganon, was dragged into the space turbulence and suffered a setback. His physical condition had not recovered to the top level. In the previous attack, Link suffered a little. I underestimated you. Laufey looked at Link grimly. The order within the Frost Giants is that the weak obey the strong. As the leader, Laufey must be absolutely strong to maintain his authority. Under Link's attack, he actually took a few steps back. In front of so many Frost Giants, being beaten back by Link would undoubtedly make the unruly Frost tribe question Laufey. Link's face was pale because of the cold poison. With every breath, the heat would immediately turn into countless small ice particles. It seems that Link was still reluctant to resist the cold poison. Laufey put his hands on the ground, and suddenly countless ice pillars burst out and stabbed Link away. The power was strong enough to tear an iceberg apart. Link saw the ice pillars rushing towards him, and there was another cold airflow that made him disgusted. He didn't dodge or evade, holding the vibranium shield, and swung his hand back. Tap. Perfect shield counter. The sharp icicle shattered. Laufey roared and rushed from behind the icicle, fighting with Link. Thunder and lightning were everywhere, and the cold air was biting. Wherever they passed, the ground was cracked because of the fight between the two, and a large pit collapsed. Laufey and Link fought back and forth several times in a few seconds, but Link's martial arts were superb. Although he had just got Thor's hammer, he was able to master the use of Thor's hammer, as if he had practiced it for decades. Although Laufey did not have the upper hand in the fight, but when he waved his hand, he exuded a fascinating cold poison, which continued to invade Link's body. At this time, Link's lips were blue and purple, and his eyebrows and hair were frosty white. Laufey sneered, "How is it? Is it very cold? Want to experience the pain of having your cells pierced by ice crystals? You have already ingested a large amount of my cold poison. Once the cold poison breaks out completely, your body will be pierced by ice cones and explode to death." Oh. Link hit back with the hammer. "Do you think you are the only one who can use the power of ice?" In Link's ear, the goddess Hylia murmured, "Complete the brave training. Strengthen the ice maker skills. Please vote and collect." Thank you for your support of 500 starting coins from Jio Oshishuo. Thank you for your support of 100 starting coins from Lily Shooping. Thank you for all the book friends for your support of a large number of recommendation votes. Thank you all. Love you. Chapter 98 Time stops. After the goddess Hylia's whispers ended, the cold poison that was raging in Link's body suddenly weakened and could no longer harm Link's internal organs. It was as if Link had an eye in his body. He could clearly identify the degree of cold poison accumulation in his body and could also see that his heart was wrapped in cold poison. Just a moment ago, this energetic heart was trembling desperately under the invasion of cold poison, and the blood almost stopped flowing. "Return it to you." Link used Thor's hammer to break King Laufey's ice barrier and rushed in front of him. He opened his mouth slightly and controlled the cold poison accumulated in his body, stabbing King Laufey like a water gun. King Laufey only felt a white frost in front of his eyes, even with the dark blue airflow rushing in front of him and quickly freezing. In an instant, this huge body, under the gushing of huge amounts of cold poison in Link's body, actually condensed into a huge ice ball with a diameter of 10 meters. "Leader." The other frost giants saw King Laufey frozen by the backlash of the cold poison and shouted in the language of Jotunheim. A dozen frost giants rushed over to kill Link. The second King Laufey was frozen, Link felt the struggle and fluctuations coming from the inside of the huge ice ball, and then he wanted to pierce the ice ball and jump out. You know, the cold poison itself came from Laufey, so it naturally couldn't hurt Laufey himself. A large number of frost giants attacked from the back, and Laufey was about to break free in front. Link seemed to be in a dilemma. Thor carried a frost giant and used it as a hammer, swinging it around to hit people. The frost giants used as weapons by him screamed and bleed, but in the later stage, the frost giants in Thor's hands were already silent. Thor saw a large number of frost giants besieging Link. Witnessing the scene of Link fighting Laufey, Thor, out of the dignity of the god of thunder, naturally could not tolerate Link's taking over the show, and planned to go to support Link. But the ground trembled, and a sharp and violent wave rippled out. The sound of the battle on the ice plane was suddenly suppressed by a fierce breathing sound. Thor looked up and saw a huge dark blue beast standing on the iceberg. It looked very ferocious and was not a herbivore. Thor recognized the monster at a glance. It was King Laufey's minion, the frost beast. Seeing King Laufey being wrapped up, the frost beast quickly jumped down, opened its mouth, exposed its fangs, and fell rapidly. A huge shadow covered Link. Thor roared, "Your opponent is me." Thor shouted, jumped up, held the poor frost giant in his hands with both hands, and smashed the frost beast hard. Intercept it. Let's talk about Link. Mipha saw a large number of frost giants besieging him, and felt worried for Link. But Link smiled and said, "Don't worry. Watch how I deal with them." Mipha became even more worried. She had witnessed what Link looked like when he was a child. Back then, Link was not as silent, taciturn, and steady as he is now. He was a happy little boy who loved adventures every day. He often liked to do dangerous things, such as taking a stick to trouble the vicious lizardman near Zora's territory. One day, Link quietly ran away for adventure. Mipha was worried about Link's safety and looked for him everywhere. When she found Link, the little Link was already covered in wounds and sitting in a lizardman's nest full of corpses, biting the half-cooked roasted lizard tail she cooked with an unhappy look. This left a great psychological shadow on Mipha. Although Link was not as talkative and smiling as before, his eyes were still that dazzling luster of desire for adventure and excitement. Link reached out to the huge ice ball that bound King Laufey and shouted, "Stop time." The ice ball was suddenly covered with a layer of golden film, and several golden chains bound it, making it imprisoned in time and indestructible. Link jumped behind the ice ball, and with all his strength, he took Thor's hammer and pounded on the surface of the ice ball. Dang, 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 dang. Since he had Thor's hammer in his hand, Link didn't worry that the hammer would not be able to withstand his power and explode, so he pounded with all his strength. The surface of the ice ball imprisoned by time gradually turned red from golden yellow. In a short period of time, Link pounded more than 50 times, and all his strength was accumulated on the ice ball. The surface of the time-imprisoned surface began to flicker constantly, and suddenly the chain collapsed. Link hurriedly jumped on the ice ball. The ice ball, which had accumulated Link's hammering for more than 50 times, suddenly burst out with suppressed power in an instant, and catapulted into the group of frost giants who were attacking. Pa. 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 The frost giants were stunned. The huge ice ball, like a billiard ball, flew towards them. Before they could react, they wondered what was going on. Just like a bowling pin, pa. It was knocked away. Link sat on the ice ball and quickly counted the frost giants he hit. 1, 2, 3. In the end, he knocked away 7 frost giants. Unfortunately, the position was not ideal. The frost giants surrounded him in a circle instead of a long line, so the killing range of Link's time-stop critical hit and ejection of the ice ball was limited. But with the help of the unstoppable ice ball, Link successfully broke through the encirclement. Even though the ice ball knocked over 7 frost giants, it did not stop its momentum. However, the ice layer on the surface could not hold on and broke apart, revealing King Laufey inside. Link did a backflip and jumped away. "Do you think you can hurt my frost giant with ice?" King King Laufey had just broken free from the ice ball and suddenly found that he was flying fast in the air and there was an iceberg in front of him. Bang! King Laufey shouted along no and then reluctantly crashed into the iceberg. Then, the iceberg cracked with a sound, and a long crack suddenly appeared from the hole created by King Laufey. Like a tree spreading its branches and leaves, it quickly spread throughout the entire iceberg, and then collapsed. Link landed, hooked his finger on the hanging rope of Thor's hammer, and swung it around, hitting the nearby frost giant. Looking tiredly at the collapsing iceberg, a large amount of ice disintegrated, as if a sand sculpture was washed away by a rainstorm. Link could feel the violent tremors under his feet from a distance, and even the ice surface on the ground was shaken into many cracks. Everyone, including Thor and the frost giant, looked at Link and the collapsed iceberg in shock. For a while, there was no other sound on the ice plane except the lonely roar of the iceberg collapsing. Thor clapped his hands suddenly. What kind of strong man is this? Loki also twisted his neck in amazement, with an expression of toothache, but he quickly reacted and stabbed a knife into the arms of the frost giant who was fighting with him next to him, but was stunned because of Link. As for the other Asgard warriors, they were a little entangled after being shocked. It felt like I came from afar to challenge the devil, but the devil was beaten down by a stronger devil. My group of people came up to watch the show. Use time to stop an object, and then hit it many times, to accumulate strength to blow it up. I have wanted to write about this cool operation in the game for a long time. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the support of Lily Shooping 100 starting coins. Thank you for the generous recommendation votes from all the book friends. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 99. Nodding comes to help. Link was panting heavily, and in the cold country of Jotunheim, his whole body was emitting steaming heat, like a cup of boiling milk tea. After such a heavy blow, the frost giant King Laufey should be dead, right? Link fought repeatedly. He died once in the middle, and he was exhausted. After walking on the dangerous wire for so long, Link was already a little bored. Although he liked adventure, he was not a person who liked killing. The constant life and death battles made him exhausted, and his shoulders drooped. Mifra obediently used her red little hands to help Link rub his shoulders, and used her protective power to micro-warm Link's tired nerves. She whispered, "You always hurt yourself." Thor was still in a daze, and the frost beast that was fighting with him reacted first, opened its mouth, abahoo, and ate Thor into its mouth. Siv Vangarhagen shouted, "Thor." As a result, Loki was distracted and was grabbed by a frost giant. Loki panicked because his companion was grabbed by the frost giant and his arm was severely injured. Loki's arm was quickly covered with a layer of ice, but then something happened that shocked Loki and the frost giant who attacked him. The cold poison invaded Loki's body, just like a cup of water melting into another cup of water, and was naturally absorbed into Loki's body without causing any harm. The frost giant was shocked and looked at Loki in confusion, because only his people would not be afraid of the cold poison of the frost giant. Of course, Link was not afraid at this moment. Could it be that Loki was? Loki reacted quickly and stabbed with a knife, piercing the chest of the frost giant. When dying, the frost giant still had a shocked and confused expression, which made Loki feel unprecedented coldness in his heart, which was worse than the cold poison eroding his soul. Thor was swallowed into the belly of the frost beast as dog food. The frost monster chewed desperately, and Thor, as the god of thunder, was extraordinary in strength even without his hammer. He stretched out his fists and punched in his wide mouth, hitting his upper jaw with enough force to leave the prints of Thor's fists on the steel plate. The frost monster tried to chew Thor, binding Thor with his tongue and moving towards his teeth. Thor was very anxious and hurriedly called for his beloved hammer. "Link, give me back my hammer." Thor roared in the frost monster's foul and cold mouth, regardless of whether Link could hear him or not. When he opened his mouth, he was penetrated by the frost monster's sticky saliva. Thor rolled his eyes. So strong. Link was still observing the collapsed iceberg and suddenly felt the hammer struggling. When he turned his head, he saw the frost monster chewing something. Link reacted and reluctantly let go of Thor's hammer. Mjolnir flew towards the frost monster's mouth. Thor was about to be torn in half by two teeth as thick as barrels. The hammer rolled over and hit the monster's mouth with a bang. The huge force directly tore the mouth and continued to charge without slowing down, spinning and breaking a fang that was about to cut Thor in half. Thor reached out and held the hammer, feeling so relieved that he couldn't help himself. He stroked Thor's hammer and said gently, "You are finally back. It's time to kill this guy." Link looked at the frost monster and suddenly a ball of blood burst out of his forehead. Thor raised his hammer and rushed out like Ultraman, covered with mucus, and then was frozen into a popsicle by the outdoor air at minus dozens of degrees. Thor laughed and said, "Haha. This is the end of provoking my Asgard. Go to your Asgard." A heavy voice came, and the frost giants who had been silent roared excitedly. Link turned his head suddenly and looked at the figure walking out from under the collapsed iceberg. "You, tell me your name. We've fought to this extent. Still not dead." Link's heart sank. He was already very tired, and King Laufey shouted from afar. His voice was angry and heavy, obviously he was not seriously injured. Link felt so hungry that he could eat 2 Hulks. Many frost giants surrounded Link, Thor and others. Thor asked Link, "Is Laufey easy to fight?" Link said, "It's easy to fight, but I have to have a full meal. I'm so hungry that I don't have the strength." Thor whispered, "I admire you very much. If you go back alive, I will invite you to visit Asgard. Please taste the fine wine of Asgard. You and I are very similar, both are strong, both have beautiful hair, both can emit electricity, both like hammers, and hammers like us. I guess you must love drinking too." Link couldn't tell whether Thor was praising him or himself, and frowned. "I don't like the smelly liquid squeezed out of corrupted food." Link was very interested in delicious food and good drinks, except for wine. There has never been such a thing as alcohol in Hyrule. Link also doesn't understand why this liquid that can make people unconscious is welcomed by so many people in the Marvel world. Thor is very sorry, it's a pity, but you are indeed too young to drink. Link, I'm over 100 years old. Thor, only over 100 years old. Younger than I thought. Link. Loki interrupted and said, "Instead of chatting here, why don't you think about how to break out?" Thor, "Hit it out with a hammer." Link, "Yes. Hit it out with a hammer." Thor moved Thor's hammer farther away from Link, worried that Link would try to snatch it. After all, the originally chaste Mjolnir is now like a ruthless woman who has fallen in love with someone else, and she accepts everyone who comes to Link. Laufey came in front of Link and said sternly, "Say your name." Link, boom. Thunder came from the sky, and from the end of the sky, a strong light hit the ground and hit the center of Thor and others. Then, an ancient and cold breath was exuded, and Link seemed to have returned to the Earth 250 million years ago. A strange majestic and sacred momentum spread from the light. Thor, Loki. In the light, Odin appeared riding a horse and holding the spear of Gungnir. Odin looked at Link deeply and then moved his eyes to King Laufey. Thor shouted excitedly, "Father, let's defeat this shameless frost giant together." Odin shouted, "Shut up, my stupid son." Laufey's hateful eyes also shifted from Link to Odin's face, sneering, "Odin, you look very tired." Odin tried to soften his tone and said, "Master of Jotunheim, leader of the frost giants, my reckless child has caused you trouble. Please don't mind." Laufey stepped forward and said angrily, "You think?" Odin suddenly shouted, like thunder. The light suddenly shot out, expanding outward at the speed of light, repelling a large group of people. The entire plane collapsed. A cloak rolled up. The second prince and the 4 warriors of Asgard, including Link, were swept into the strong light and disappeared. Thanks to Lily Shooping for 100 starting coins. Thanks to Minecraft for 100 starting coins. And thanks to all the book friends for their generous recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 100 Father-Son Conflict. Link only felt that his body was washed by countless penetrating rays of light, as if his body was transparent. His feet were weightless, and he could not feel the land. Soon, he landed in a circular metal building with simple patterns. At the exit, he could see a white crystal bridge with colorful colors extending to a majestic ancient palace building. Even from a distance, he could feel the magnificence of the palace. Link's feet shook, and he felt the pulling force of the earth again and stood firm. He saw Odin from under his thick white eyebrows, 2 weathered eyes, majestic but angry and even tired, looking at Link coldly. Midgard, Earthling. Why are you in Jotunheim? Odin questioned Link. Compared to the tall Asgardians, Link seemed too short, but he met Odin's gaze calmly, his eyes clear and bright. Because of some things that made Loki shudder in the previous battle, Loki looked strange. He said, when did the Midgardians have such strong military force and ears like donkeys? Thor patted Link's shoulder in a familiar manner and said to his father with a smile, this is a respectable warrior. Just now, he actually. Thor paused, not wanting to tell about Link's lifting of Mjolnir. Link ignored Loki's ridicule and said to Odin, I'm not from Earth, but from a world called Hyrule. I traveled to Earth to pursue Ganon, the demon king who escaped from our world. Link didn't like to hide anything and told Odin directly about his origins. This is one of the advantages of traveling to the Marvel world. No matter how strange the origin is, it will not look weird in this magical world where technology, magic, fantasy and mythology coexist. Thor looked at Link in surprise and repeated, Ganon? Thor was not unfamiliar with this ominous name. Ganon's escape to the Marvel world affected not only the Earth, but other planets as well. Thor once led his teammates to conquer monsters such as the Ice Lizardmen. These strange monsters that suddenly appeared were rampant in the territory of Asgard and were finally hammered to death by Thor's hammer. Odin didn't care about Ganon. After all, he had seen too many gods, demons, ghosts, and immortals, and killed too many gods, demons, ghosts, and immortals. Ganon had not yet fully awakened, and his power was only released a little bit. So even if Odin sensed the existence of such an evil force, he would not care much. What he cared about was actually Link himself. Odin was such a perceptive person that he could tell the status of a person with his knees. And Link had a sacred aura that moved Odin. This sacred aura actually came from the blessing of the goddess Hylia to Link. Thor laughed heartlessly and shouted, look, warriors from Hyrule. To celebrate this great battle, should we hold a grand banquet to entertain Link and this ghost lady? Thor stared at Mipha with his eyes as bright as a cub, not knowing what kind of creature this beautiful girl who was like a ball of smoke was. Shut up, Thor. Odin shouted, what are you celebrating? You went to Jotunheim privately and made a big fuss among the frost giants together with this equally ferocious boy. Are you celebrating that you have destroyed the precious piece of the 9 realms? Take Vangal back to heal. Thor's smile disappeared, and he shouted, Jotunheim must respect me as much as it respects you. Odin said angrily, have you forgotten everything I gave you? What about your patience as a warrior? Thor stepped forward and did not give in at all. While you are patient, people from other countries are laughing at us. Asgard needs to prove itself with bravery in the blood of frost giants. Odin was furious. You are a cruel, greedy, vain and stupid boy. And you're just an old man. Thor blurted out, and then regretted it. He looked at Odin's face, which changed again and again, as if he had been hit by a punch. Although this is a thankless task, I really don't want to copy the dialogues of the original movie. Although it can make up the word count, it will greatly destroy the pleasure of writing, and will damage my motivation to write the story. Loki wanted to step forward to dissuade him, but was shrunk by Odin's roar. He had to whisper to Link, congratulations on seeing the ugly side of our family. And Mipha asked Link nervously, what is my brother Siddo's personality like when he grows up? He shouldn't contradict his father like the bearded man, right? Link, no, Prince Siddo respects the old king very much. Every time he greets the old king, he brushes his teeth 3 times. Mipha. At this time, Odin was already very sad. He didn't expect that his eldest son, who he had high hopes for, was just a fierce and aggressive man. He stepped forward to strip the bewildered Thor's breastplate, snatched Thor's hammer, announced that Thor's power would be sealed, and exiled him to the earth. Now, in the name of my father and my grandfather, you will be expelled from the gods. Odin pointed his hammer at Thor. Thor's armor broke, and he rushed into the Rainbow Bridge. Then Odin whispered to Thor's hammer, whoever holds Thor's hammer, as long as he can pick it up, he will gain the power of Thor. Loki's face suddenly looked strange. Although he was very sad and disappointed with Thor, Odin gave Thor the last hope and injected it into Mjolnir. He planned to throw the hammer into the Rainbow Bridge. At this time, an untimely voice came. "I can pick up Thor's hammer. Will you give it to me?" Odin looked back at Link in astonishment and subconsciously made a move that made him regret it, handing Thor's hammer to Link. Then he shouted, "Ha! You don't know how to respect the artifact. The words of the father of the gods are never violated." Loki hurriedly shouted, "Father!" But Odin ignored Loki. He came a step late. If he had arrived earlier, he and his beloved son would have dropped their jaws and watched Link holding the hammer and smashing people randomly, and he would not have made such a rash promise. Odin wanted to punish Link, who was ignorant of the heaven and earth, so he threw the hammer over to him, intending to make Link suffer. But he didn't expect that. Link caught it easily. Immediately, Odin had a horrified expression, as if he saw his eldest daughter Hela helping an old lady cross the street on the street of Earth. Link rarely showed a sly smile and glanced at Loki, then played with the hammer in his hand like a pen. Ever since he crossed the Marvel world, Link has been waiting for this opportunity. Loki told Odin helplessly, "Father, I forgot to tell you. Link once took Thor's hammer and fought with Laufey. Why didn't you tell me earlier? When I speak, you are mean to me." Odin was so angry that he wanted to kick his second son off the earth. Well, tomorrow, New Year's Day, at midnight, this work will be officially launched. It's quite a coincidence that there are exactly 100 chapters. If nothing unexpected happens, I will update 20,000 words on the first day. It was with everyone's enthusiastic support and encouragement that I persisted until this book was put on the shelves. I also hope that everyone will continue to support this work in the future. Thank you is the word I use most frequently. My gratitude to all book friends is self-evident. I have read all the recommendation votes and rewards you have cast for me, including the book reviews in the book review area and even the chapter reviews within the chapters. I keep the support and suggestions of book friends in my heart. It is our fate that you can find this book. It is my blessing that you like this book. This work is written for all book friends. Only stories that are read by others can have life. I also thank my editors and Guy for recommending and supporting this book to be put on the shelves. Thank you for his trust. I implore everyone to support genuine reading. Please be the first to place an order. Please affirm. Once again, thank you. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.